Shalom. So I really, I have been obsessively um, listening to podcasts at 1.5 speed for several days now, um, not sleeping. Um, and frankly, I was just too emotional and too much of a wreck to stream yesterday. Um, and I didn't think it would help anything. I still don't know if this is going to help anything. If anybody would like to jump on, like having people to talk to will make this a lot easier. To the extent that I have developed any sort of trust in your distributed cognition network, that you think I understand how government and the law works and how the politics of this country work. Elon Musk, as I understand it, has physically taken over the civilian government of this United States. To say that this is kind of a soft coup is not an exaggeration. What is shocking to me is that people like Ezra Klein, and you can no. See, this is the thing. We've gotten so used to overstatements that it has become impossible to actually state what's going on. we no longer have. Hello, Sandy.
Hey, Jacob.
Our soon to be fellow American.
Oh no, that's the one thing I'm hearing all kinds of that's what's got people's backs up.
I don't think we're going to conquer you anytime soon.
That's good. Last week I was watching a little bit of a combination of American impressions on Canadians in various contexts, humorous ones usually, and something that came up on don't mess with Canadians in the war. They may be polite on the surface while you're on good terms, but if you look back on the history of World War I and II, you didn't want to go there.
Yeah. The fact is, at this point, I think Donald Trump is more of a distraction than anything else. Yes, you are absolutely right that they haven't started doing things without Trump being included. But that's because they decided to do that. Right? I want you to understand what that means. Lance.
Second here, I got to mood out.
How much have you been listening to what's been going on?
Oh, every night I go home,
Yeah.
and I'm fascinated by the blitzkrieg that is happening. It's amazing.
Blitzkrieg is the exact word I used, but I mean, to the lawyers, I have been recommending. Here, let me find the video. I have been recommending a podcast from the Brookings Institute, which I watched last night. And if you if you understand the lawyer speak in the ways that you would, Lance, I put it in the public chat here. I'll put it in the private chat just in case you need that. When you listen through the lawyer speak to and I read one of the filings yesterday. I am shocked they have nothing. They're not even trying.
What do you mean the left wing?
Yeah.
Well,
here is a complete paper tiger. They've just rolled over.
Well, but here's if you would just think about this. First off, the president of the United States, as things are set up in our country, has broad powers, right? And that's supposed to be the case, right?
Correct.
And then also, if you would think about, for example, I'll just throw some things out there. So for the reason why federal government workers could organize a union is because there was a JFK executive order way back then. Some things have never been codified subsequently, and they just kind of went and they built this stuff, so on and so forth. In addition, if you would think about the ability to affect the administrative state, right? Mm-hmm. So a new administration comes in. Can you make changes in the administrative state? And do you have some pretty broad latitude and some powers to be able to make those? The answer is absolutely yes. Now, when there are congressionally enacted specific fundings and other sorts of things, there's a lot to that. And so there will be, rightly so, I think rightly so, there will be a lot of challenges to those of us who were, and I would just say, this is no longer left versus right, this thing that's going on, it's a bad framing. And it kind of is Democrat because they're all one side and they're showing their face with not supporting RFK Jr. or Tulsi.
Well, it's Lynn Cheney and Kamala Harris together.
Well, it's
under the Democratic flag.
It's the entrenched bureaucrats, right, and so on and so forth. So, but the thing that has happened is so much that's happened in Washington has not been. They haven't. So we all know this. They've stopped doing their jobs where they actually pass legislation really for these things. They get this administrative state, they're running around, they're making all these rulings and everything else. And you'll know this, Jacob. The overruling of the Chevron case was massive because it basically said, hey, administrative state folks, you can't just go over and start making all this stuff and promulgate all these rules and do all this stuff that wasn't given to you, so on and so forth. So there will be a ton of challenges. And I think I want those challenges to happen. I really do, right? And then what will happen is they're going to file it, Jacob, we know what's going to happen. They will file it with a friendly left-wing judge who will uphold the challenge. It's going to have to get all the way up to the Supreme Court. But
I think you're assuming a level of challenge that I would have a couple of days ago, and what I have seen over the past 3 days, what you are saying is what I would have been saying 3 days ago.
And you're wondering why they aren't responding quicker?
It's not just that. First and foremost, I did not think that Elon had the crack crew of really some of the best coders, like computer experts. Like, these are not just.
That surprises you?
To have them come into the government, they've taken over. They have kinetically taken over.
Yeah.
All of the command and control of the federal government.
Well, what they've done is, by the way, so last time we saw the resist movement, right? And everything that happened, and you had those people who were resisting. But So basically what they do is so one of the Achilles heels of all the crap that's happened is, and quite frankly, a lot of people are just stealing money from us in these federal government jobs, right? No show, don't showing up. The funny thing is that since they're all working remote, you know how easy it is to start shutting people down and shutting people out. So it's wonderful.
But it's not. But they're not just doing that. They are physically like. I don't think you realize. I mean, okay.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
Prophet Zachariah.
No. So
the
stop.
entire administration and its tactics were foretold by Bap and Yarvin. Yarvin put out a blog post saying he was wrong about how ineffective Trump was going to be. I love you, Lance. I don't think you realize what has happened. This is a tectonic shift.
Yes.
On a level.
Yes.
I expect by this time next year for there to be 1 million fewer federal employees.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
RFK Jr. looks like it's going to be. Looks like he's going to be.
All of his nominees get passed.
Yeah, yep. RFK Jr. is going to be confirmed. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is going to be the Center for Medicare and let me just see if I know this person. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services is the amount of money that goes through there, right? I expect the cost savings to be in a level that nobody. This is apocalyptic times. I think Peter Thiel, if you've been paying attention, has been talking about the Antichrist.
So slow down.
For the first time, I think now we need to talk about the Antichrist.
So let's slow down here. Let's slow down here.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you slow down and also stick
go ahead.
Closer to one line of this is what's actually happening, and this is how we're telling you guys about it. For the person who does not share your.
So to put context on this, Jacob, this is not surprising. This is not surprising to me. What I am overjoyed with is the speed and the speed and the efficiency with which they're actually coming in to do exactly what they said. That these are things that they talked very specifically about doing, right? And how I would just say that, and here's why. So people would probably want to know. So how can they get away with? So one of the people say is like, you got to have the political will and everything else. Well, how can you ultimately be doing all these things and they're polling on a daily basis? Trump's approval ratings at a higher than it's ever been, somewhere between 58 and 60%. This has even been reported at CNN right now. And then Democrats are at their lowest, the Quinnipiac poll, they're at their lowest favorable rating. And this is taking into consideration everything that's happened. What happened is, and this is also the post-COVID world that we live in, Jacob, everything else, this is no longer left versus right. These are people that have said enough's enough. All this corruption, all this BS, we are done with it. And when you have a coalition that includes the Maha movement, right, and RFK Jr., a lot of those were the Bernie folks who came over, and so you had them voting for them. You also have
Lance. Again, I think most people who are listening to you don't realize that you're an actual messianist who believed in a lot of things happening that the vast majority of Americans think you are crazy about.
Well, no, not fast. No, so this is where you're wrong. This is where you're wrong.
Lance.
No, say Jacob, this is where you're wrong. People wanted this exact thing to happen. They wanted someone to go into Washington and break up all this corruption. And so, because here's what, Jacob, let me
Did
finish.
not believe that was possible. You're saying things we've heard, Lance. Yes, we've heard.
We're not shocked, Jacob. See, listen, I'm just putting a mirror back up to you. Now you live in California too, which is a very different place. Remember that.
It is, but there are millions of people who live in California with me.
So here's my pushback to you, Jacob. Here's my pushback. Then why are the numbers and the support for the actions that are being taken, polling consistently high? What I'm saying is the dam broke.
You completely misunderstand me, Lance. You're not understanding what I'm saying. Okay, as these things become, as what is happening becomes further evident, the poll numbers are going to go insanely high. Trump is going to be at 80%, possibly 90% approval.
So what you're fearful of is
this is the time when we start talking about the Antichrist and apocalypse.
I missed the beginning. So what you're saying is this: the level of corruption that's being laid out obviously in front of people, most normies are going to be, oh my God, I had no idea it was this bad. And you feel as if that's going to create an environment where
King Elon will be able to do whatever he wants.
Well, here's the interesting thing. So here's what has to happen. But ultimately what has happened is the Democratic Party has completely and utterly collapsed in terms of support with the American people.
And I want people to understand, if you listen to Ezra Klein, he put out a podcast, a 10-minute, highly produced podcast this morning, in which he said, don't believe your lying eyes. Nothing's happening.
So
Ezra Klein put out from the New York Times this morning. They are completely, they don't understand. This war is over. They have lost, and they're just Baghdad bombing it.
Well, but so here's the deal. So if you think about what we're really looking at in this country, is you have the 30% that are still the progressive true believers who are watching MSNBC, whatever that number would be, right? Or they don't pay that much attention and they just hate Trump and they think whatever. So, but nobody's reading those newspapers. Nobody's watching those shows. So in that small little group of, let's just say 30%, they're over there, and we just need to let them be over there, and they can have their fun and do their things.
Yeah,
the rest of us have moved on.
Correct. Yes, the war has moved past these people. Ezra Klein is high on his own supply. I thought that there would be a response, and for the past day, I have been for the past 24 hours, I have been watching Pod Save America, Kara Swisher, New York Times, Brookings Institute, looking for the response. We have had a civil war in this country. The other side has lost and doesn't even know it yet.
Well, so I would just say, so here's the deal. I think there are large numbers that don't know it yet.
Correct.
The other issue they have is that, well, so here's the deal. The empire will strike back, Jacob. Okay? Now, they're going to have to regroup. They haven't yet backed down and realized. Because listen, their whole world crumbled around them, and then their ability to try and manufacture stuff to take out confirmation stuff, like they're just still grappling with the fact that legacy media is dead. They can't pull the shenanigans they used to be able to pull before.
This is Chuck Schumer on the floor of the Senate.
Yes.
Trying to get people to understand what's going on. and he is failing.
Yep.
That this is the empire trying to strike back, and there is no empire. There is no empire. The paper tiger has folded. It's gone.
And so ultimately what's going to happen here, Jacob, and you know this, is that right now the people who had all the tentacles and all the power, that's why going after, if anybody spent any time, like if this is the first time you've heard of what US aid is, welcome to the party. People have been complaining about it for a long time. It's the slush fund where they pay themselves and their friends and they do all this nefarious stuff other places. Like Bill Kristol was, got money out of that.
Right. All of that is gone.
Newland, all that stuff. And so here's the dangerous thing that I do look at this so Jacob, right now they're still reeling. They're still grasping. At some point, there are going to be some moderate Democrats they're going to need to step into the breach, and they do exist, but they have not been able to exist. But right now they don't have an answer, and all their tactics, other than trying to call people like Hakeem Jeffries said, let's get in the streets, right?
Yeah.
Other than that game, which they're starting to pull off a little bit more. Right now, they after COVID and everything else and all the unmasking that took place, right? They no longer have the silent majority has spoken up, and they want this administration to do everything that they're doing.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So people are asking why I'm upset. I'm not upset. I was upset yesterday, and I was upset because I could not believe that what was happening was happening. It was a happy upset. These are things that when I was a young man, I used to dream of happening. And I keep on flashing back to a policy discussion at the American Enterprise Institute from 2016 that I used to send people to. And that video has 1,000 views. 500 of them are from me telling people to go watch that video. Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so
in that Lance, in that video, the guy says, I fear the political situation we would have to be in for these reforms to take place. And I am at the point where I am like, this is very, very good. These are things I never imagined were actually realistically going to happen. We are going to have to deal with the repercussions of what is actually happening right now, which is going to be very soon 1 million government employees who are suddenly unemployed.
Yep.
We are going to have to deal with elites who thought they had a lot of power and they no longer do. We are going to see the world changing in ways that a lot of people are going to have no clue what's happening. And there is a danger, and now I understand why Peter Thiel was talking about the danger of the Antichrist. There is a danger that because these things are going to be so apocalyptic, I see right now, the danger that I am seeing is that we're going to see Elon Musk as too much of a savior, and he's going to go too far. Because what the tectonic changes that I have seen over the past weekend, people, the news media, the legacy media is not properly digesting this. This is an absolute revolution in how our society is ordered.
Yeah, it's a chance to. And the thing is they only have themselves to blame for it, right? Because they created the conditions, which created the unity movement, which then gave people so government, the entrenched class, glacial moving. We can't just do this. Of course we always could have if we wanted to. And it took someone that they had to try and put in prison, assassinate, and everything else to finally come in and say, okay, I'm in. And so they took the political will. I think, so here's where I do think you're right, Jacob, which is, so those people, so by shutting down USAID and kind of getting rid of the permanent grift and everything else and all that stuff was there, we have an entire laptop class of elites and even the middle manager elites who don't have workable skills, right? They'll have to learn. Well, no. But they don't have. So if you, again, they can find new jobs and they can do this, but the fact of the matter is not like they have hard skills like accounting or lawyers or stuff like that or whatever, but they're getting paid really well. What you've done is you've taken away their entire careers and livelihoods. Yeah. These people have, so when you do that, I have nothing to lose than to fight. So that's going to be really interesting. To see, because that is a big deal.
We are living in interesting times. I want to hear what Aaron has to say, because without doxing Aaron, he has a view of this which I really do want to hear.
Yeah, I'm in the belly of the beast, so to speak. One of them, of the numerous. I mean, it's chaos. It's chaos. There was a meeting today where it was being discussed, and all of the managers basically told us we don't know anything.
Yeah.
We have no idea. We cannot give you any reassurance because we have no reassurance.
Yeah.
And so this is what we can do for you. Which is the main topic of discussion was really the voluntary resignation. That's the thing that was on everybody's mind.
Just to make clear, because I think you did say it, you work in the federal government, and you're one of the people who received the fork in the road email and have to decide whether or not to resign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've waffled back and forth on it quite a bit. I think that my workplace is going to get hit pretty hard. And so I'm not sure that I want to be involved with that. And so it's just one of those things where I am not a career civil servant. I lucked into the position. And so here I am. I think I can find something in 8 months, but I don't know. I got 2 days to figure it out.
I'll just tell you, I mean, in this crazy thing, what I personally in your situation would do is I would take the offer and maybe even take a job. Like they are going to end up opening up more jobs in the federal government because this is a tectonic shift, and if you can do the jump of taking the 8 months from the old system and getting a new job and getting double paid, do it.
Yeah, I mean that's what's been running through my mind. I know a couple of folks in the private sector that have said there's some potential there as well.
Yeah.
The parish I go to, there's somebody I know who is had some positions in his company open. I'm looking at it all. Having that kind of flexibility to figure that out is good.
Yeah.
I'm really like one of the things. I guess nobody's talking about the future 2, 3, 4 years off because it's so crazy right now that it's impossible to guess.
It is.
It is just impossible to guess. But the thing that I guess concerns me about all this is I'm right on board with streamlining the government. My time in the government has taught me that the government runs in a very interesting way. But what I don't think that the money is going to go into everything else. I think it's just going to get funneled into most of the regular places, like the military, maybe tech.
It's not obvious. That is certainly a concern that we might just be shuffling money. The line from the Bible that has been going through my head is Tov lachasot ba'Hashem mivtoach ben divim. It is better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes. Now, it doesn't say to trust in horrible people or in normal people. It says to trust in princes.
Right.
We are in a situation where, again, I keep on going back to Peter Thiel warning us about apocalypse and Antichrist, and saying, okay, things are really shifting. My worry is a little bit what Sandy typed out, as far as like, okay, we're going to have 1 million people out of jobs, I believe, at least, in this efficiency. Now, that is a good thing for the economy. That's wealth that was generally being wasted that is no longer going to be consumed, right? So that wealth is still going to be around, and hopefully it will trickle as much as these things can trickle, which would be very, very good. And like Lynn says, Malay appears to have been doing this very successfully in Argentina. This is not just a US thing. This is probably going to be repeated in England soon.
No doubt.
We are looking at something that really is revolutionary. And frankly, yesterday I did not dare hope that this would be coming into fruition the way it is. And if anybody who's been watching, who saw my post from yesterday from Twitter and who knows me, 25 years ago, I was a young man coming back from Israel to decide what I wanted to do in life. I got into USC Law School, and I was going to do a dual Master's of Public Administration because my hope for the rest of my life was to be an effective administrator in the government. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I thought I was going to be my career for the rest of my life. And by the end of my coursework, I was, not just because of that, but also because of seeing the rampant waste and my inability to actually make good things happen. I became clinically depressed. I was suicidal, right? And I ended up dropping out of college. And the things that appear to be about to happen, and let me just make clear, the first thing you're going to see, I believe, is when RFK Jr. gets into the Health and Human Services and Mehmet Oz gets into CMS and Jay Bhattacharya gets into the National Institutes of Health, you are going to see efficiency. The empire is definitely going to try to strike back, but you are going to see efficiency in Medicare that is going to open up vast amounts of wealth in the federal government. People are going to be shocked, and the reality of the situation is going to be in such a way that it will be undeniable. And so right now I'm like, we need to move on. Like last week I was in Lance mode, right? Like, okay, this is what we're trying to do. This is our hope. I'm beyond that. If you've been reading what Wired magazine has been printing over the weekend, if you understand what has happened, if you understand the futility of Chuck Schumer and how he has been incapable of actually dealing with what is happening on the ground, the deep state is Baghdad bombing it now. This war is over.
Yeah, so Jacob, I would just say, and Aaron, I do understand the human toll that this is going to take on certain individuals, and you're in an interesting situation right now. And I worked for a company that had the big Fortune 50. We ended up laying off people every 6 months, and it was just nuts, right? So in the corporate world, cutting or whatever, it's never fun to be a part of that. So I just want to say for you individually, it sounds like you're a sharp guy who will find things to do. But Jacob, here's why I wasn't surprised. When you saw what Vivek, I mean, this stuff, they've talked about this massive of a change. So like you're saying, I was a week ago. No, this was what I expected to happen. In addition, so Aaron, you read up something about, well, is the money going to go somewhere else? And yes, that's what we all need to be figuring out. Okay, we need to do it. But what you're seeing are our business guys are now doing business things in the federal government. And you can just cut the part, you come in, so you do an M&A, like, so a lot of those people in Washington that were sneering at us to just code, well, the young boys learn how to code, and now they're coming in, the tech guys are coming in, right? But this is very normal. And yes, there's going to be this shift that's going to happen. But I expected this to happen. What I have been ecstatic about was how they're just doing it. They're going to get in and they're going to get this done. And so here's the thing about cutting the spending, when everyone talks about inflation and everything else, like they don't think about, we're borrowing money to do all this spending, this deficit spending. So what happens is spending causes inflation, but also the government is competing for those dollars, which takes interest rates going up. So, one of the keys that's going to happen if you listen to Scott Bessent, by the way, I don't know if you guys have spent much time listening to Scott Bessent.
Sounds
uber
really
smart.
Familiar.
He's the Treasury Secretary.
Oh, okay.
So he's uber smart, right? Yeah. Uber smart guy. As he's going to work through this. They understand. I know because I've heard him talk about this. In fact, he was on that you guys, if anybody's checking out, there's this two-way thing with Mark Halperin, Sean Spicer, and Dan T.
They haven't been covering this. A lot of the legacy media
they're still
does not understand what's going on.
They're still too normie, right? And kind of still calling balls and strikes like it's a new deal. And my frustration with that is, when you talk to people, if you've actually spent enough time, there has been an absolute realignment. The dam broke and things have fundamentally changed, right? Now, here's what I would say against Jacob with respect to Elon and with respect to Trump. And it's the same thing I pointed out way before this election. In 2016, you just didn't have the rise of Trump. You had the rise of Bernie. What was happening? Think Brexit. Think Freedom Truckers convoy movement. Think the Yellow Coats. Think all that stuff that kind of that bubbled up, right? And so what you have this collection of people that have had enough, and all these things that are happening, Like, for example, shutting down the Department of Education. Oh God, please. Yes. And part of the thing is like, you can't reform certain things. The best way is just to get rid of this. But the business guys are going to want to cut, because we cut $1 trillion in spending. We're getting close. We get some growth. We can maybe get to net even. Is that, Trump and Bissett and all these guys, a guy like Elon, they're going to do this. But you're talking about kings and princes. They're just riding at the crest of this movement of the people, Jacob.
This is not the crest.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
This is not the crest. This is, and McMo asked, is the coup good or not? And Father Eric's response was, as long as Elon doesn't become the Antichrist, apparently. And that is what I am saying, right? I thought the civil, I saw the Civil War happening. It's apparently I compare this to Gorbachev and Glasnost, right? Was Glasnost a good thing? Was Gorbachev a good thing for the USSR, for the people there? Yes, I think it's obvious that the world was better off after what happened. And I certainly don't want to be ungrateful for what is honestly miraculous. God has been good to us in ways I never imagined, I never dreamed could.
Right, because you were fearful in this moment because you knew this was coming. You were fearful for violence.
Yeah, the violence. There's all kinds of things that could have happened. And what has happened in a much better way than I ever could have imagined. I honestly, like, I was reading things yesterday and I was crying. I was literally crying because I saw things happening that I had no hope could possibly happen. I have to say, I think right now, like, we have to realize what is and has happened. I don't think it's really gotten, like, Ezra Klein and Kara Swisher and John Favreau are Baghdad Bob, right? The other side, these are the thought leaders of the institutions. They are talking in ways that I'm looking on the ground and I'm like, okay, you're high on your own supply.
I was just going to say that. They are high on their own supply.
You have believed your own propaganda, right? That again, I'm telling people, don't just listen, watch the 10-minute podcast that Ezra Klein put out today. Highly, highly produced. And the entire thing he said was, don't believe your lying eyes.
Right.
That was
It's Baghdad Bob. Yep, it's Baghdad.
It was Baghdad Bob, right? So to the degree that that anybody trusts me as being someone who doesn't say stuff that is outlandish and crazy, like I haven't been for the people who have known me over the past 4 to 8 years in this space, I think I have never before, like, said things that are incredibly outlandish about what's going to happen politically with Trump or anybody else, right? I hope I have a track history with you, and part of that has been me being very careful to hopefully gain your trust in me not using hyperbolic speech, so that when I say this is King Elon's coup when I say that this is a revolution in how government in the United States is run. When I say your life, your life, whoever is listening to me right now, your life is going to be very much affected, every single one of you. Manuel says, stop qualifying yourself. It's not becoming. I just want people to understand that I have been keeping my powder dry for this moment.
So Jacob, can you expand on the king? Because I think it's interesting, because I want to pull the strings. So the King Elon.
Yes.
Would you extrapolate that? Do you have a fear? Do you have a hope when you say?
Let me put it this way. Elon now has authority and power, which I generally would not want anybody to have.
Which he's been given by the president of the United States.
By the president, and I haven't seen him abusing it yet. And I say yet because when you have the type of shifts that we have here, right? You have to be like, okay, the world is changing dramatically. We have to watch how we're doing things. And I have seen a few things. For example, they've been erasing transgender stuff on the CDC website, and it's like, okay, you're already going a little bit too far, right? Slow your roll.
I've experienced that in my workplace as well.
Yeah, they're
hitting it pretty hard.
Yeah, they need to slow their roll. And
no, you don't.
Lance is like, no.
No. So, but here's so this is a coup. So Jacob, I want to follow that thread, right? This isn't a coup, but it's a corporate hostile takeover. And what do? You get on the offense, because entrenched people, you don't give them time to entrench themselves. You strike, you keep striking. And by the way, what people would call chaos. So a lot of this stuff is that you can do more than one thing at once. And business people understand that. And the Overton window is let's slow down. Let's think about it. One thing at a time. We got to A/B tested. Whatever. Nope. You just go in and you start doing things. This is the business model. But here's what I'd say about Elon. If anybody hasn't watched it, I think everyone's seen a couple of the clips that have come out where Bill Gates shorted Tesla at a time when it was really bad for Tesla, right? And so Elon calls up Gates and goes, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, my financial advisors and I, we got together. We thought it was overvalued, so it was a smart economic play." And he's like, and supposedly Gates cares about, climate change and everything else. He's like, "You did that for effing money?" And he hung up the phone on them. Then when they were trying to, basically blackmail him through the advertisers, and he's like, "You're going to try and blackmail me with money?" What Elon has a singular thing that he's focused on. It's aspirational. Elon wants to go to Mars.
Right.
It's not about money for him. It's not about power. So when he builds batteries, why is he building the best batteries? You need battery-powered cars on Mars. Why does he build Starlink? He's got to create something for communication, right? He's doing the Boring Company. Why do you do that? It's all about getting to Mars and SpaceX. So I think Elon is in here using his skill stack to go in and very easily find the stuff and get the mass efficiencies out of the way. Elon doesn't want to be doing this 2 or 3 years from now. He wants to get the system set up. Elon wants to go to Mars.
Okay, Lance. So this is the conversation that I wanted to have. Let me read this comment. I believe you are right, Jacob. Elon is a genius beyond any of our comprehension. Now he is receiving the Ring of Sauron. We have to pray for our new leaders. It's not just Elon. There is a crew of at least 40 geniuses of a caliber that really it has not been in our government in the past 40, 50, 60 years. And I have to say, like, this is the type of thing where we have to be like, hey, Elon, I realize you want to go to Mars. Sounds like a great idea. Have fun with it. You only get the NASA budget. You don't get the Department of Defense budget.
Yeah, and I don't think I purely and so there was a great conversation.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well, so
and
Naval,
we're at the point of having to worry about corrupting.
No, I think it's absolutely fair to keep your eye on that. I'm not disagreeing with that, Jacob. There's a wonderful conversation between Scott Adams and you follow Naval Ravikant on
Not
Twitter.
really.
Really smart guy, interesting guy. He's anyway, really like him. And he challenges Scott and he's like, well, your simulation is just God, so that's some fun stuff. But he talks about the fact that, Elon's sole focus is the aspiration of getting to Mars. I don't think he wants to be the king. And money for him is just an object to be able to get to Mars. I personally don't think that Elon is corrupt. And where Bill Gates made a money play that could have, damaged the company. I don't think that's the key there. But so for example, how Elon ended up with this amazing team of people that they started with? Doge actually was accepting applications for people with skill stacks that wanted to participate in the Department of Governmental Efficiency. And so they started right after the election trying to find the best and the brightest who wanted to come in and join this group and tackle this sort of thing. So again, Jacob, when you start hearing about the best and the brightest, and by the way, if you're a young, super bright person and you have a chance to work with Elon on one of the most, like you're talking about, this is a massive, like this is going to change, this is changing the course of modern civilization. He's attracted some of the best and the brightest. It's not surprising to me that happened.
Aaron, read the note. And I want to address this. Manuel says, I'm sorry, but who are you guys to keep tracking anything? What role are you playing that your analysis holds any weight?
Is that what that is?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I'm just an American citizen following American politics in the place that I live. And it's one of the nerdy things I nerd out on. And I'm entitled as an American to have an opinion, Manuel. I love you.
Well, yeah. And no, but I want him to like, yeah. I was listening to Matthew Iglesias a while back, and he was talking about how he was talking about like how he would do things, and it just sounded like you have the kids in the back of the car talking about how they would steer the car, and it's like, okay, 5-year-old kid in the back of the car, stop talking about what gear my car should be in because it doesn't matter. And I completely understand, and that's why I want Manuel's. I think he's right to point that out. At the same time, I think that we are people trying to understand this. We are a community, and we do. For example, Aaron has to decide what he's going to do with his job, right? And so I think if, as a community of people, we should digest what's going on. And frankly, the reason I decided to do this stream, I didn't stream yesterday. despite the fact that I had lots and lots of opinions about and hopes and fears about what would happen because I didn't think it would add anything to the world. I decided to stream today because it really I see a path forward that I'm rather confident is what's going to happen. Like I said, RFK Jr. I believe is going to get confirmed, and then you're going to start seeing efficiency in CMS in ways that CMS is incredibly important. Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, go look up their budget. Look how much money goes through their CMS every year. Okay.
Well, what Bobby has control over, that's the largest budget line item, and it's not even close to the HHS. Yeah.
Right. And if you see that budget suddenly, like if I mean, I don't dare hope that Elon will be able to do with CMS what he was able to do with Twitter, which is get rid of 80% of the employees and still have it run.
You can't actually, you can get it to run better. And so here's an interesting thing. So this is kind of one of my 5,000 hour rule, Jacobs.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was working with my regional IT and communications company, right? So we were helping, things are finally becoming more, it's become more reasonable for even medium to small size businesses to be able to invest in things that are automation to simplify things, right? Tools are integrated, so on and so forth. So this is happening all up and down the scale, and the federal government doesn't have any of it, right? So what the most replaceable jobs, Jacob, the most replaceable jobs, it's actually not the truck drivers or the carpenters or the blue collar jobs are still pretty safe. The easiest job I can eliminate right now, Jacob, is a desk job. It's most of the federal government jobs. So for example, customer service is so bad when you call in and you try and, get in. Anybody tries to call into the government, you got to deal with something, whatever. You know how easy it would be to set up just, this automated customer service stuff, which is available and so on and so forth. And most of these jobs, if you're just pushing paper around and doing those sorts of jobs, you're totally replaceable, right? And so a lot of what can be done, if you would think about from the federal government level, just obvious for people who run businesses and are helping people to automate, is most of those jobs are not needed, and certainly not for pensions for the rest of their lives and everything else. We need to work on efficiencies, and we can.
If you were to ask me, what's more likely, that you can cut 80% of CMS's budget and have it still function, or 80% of Twitter's budget, workforce, and still have it function? And again, this is workforce, not budget. I don't know how much cost savings.
That's fair. No, that's fair. I think if you look
I
at
would generally say CMS. I would generally say CMS, not Twitter, because government administration. I was getting a master's of public administration. That's the equivalent of a master's of business administration for the nonprofit sector. And what we know about the nonprofit sector is it's less efficient than the for-profit sector. Okay? Mm-hmm. So it is possible that he's going to be even more efficient in dealing with CMS than he was with Twitter. If that were to happen, I don't think anybody is prepared for the civilizational change that would be. Look at the budget of CMS. Here, let me pull it up. What is the annual?
Well, and so Jacob. So here's what I would.
CMS.
So here's
$1.5 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you are having an economic shift of $1 trillion. Okay? That is A, going to be very chaotic. B, you are going to definitely have rent-seeking people who see $1 trillion, sorry, not a billion, $1 trillion shifting, and they are going to want to get their rent. They want a piece of it, and they're going to get it, right? And so, like, that's where we are right now. We are looking at changes I dared hope, I didn't think would actually. I was not as messianic as I guess I should have been. Our society is really changing, and I understand what you mean, Sally. We should send that straight to the debt. But if that were to happen, right? If we sent $1 trillion, suddenly CMS costs $1 trillion less a year, and that money goes to the debt instead. Our society is going to start shifting as a response. This is a tectonic shift in our society.
So I want to just say for you, Jacob, this absolutely is a tectonic shift, and we're barely
bond yields. I don't know the bond market that well, but as I understand it, bonds would go down because we would be buying fewer. We would be selling fewer bonds. The United States would be selling fewer bonds, but I really don't know.
Listen, government spending. This is economics 101. If anybody's taken economics 101, government spending, inflation, right? And particularly when you have debt spending, which we're doing right now, we're having to borrow to spend, causes rates to go up. And so, interest rates come down, bond yields come down, right? So that's very simple. Those are some very simple things. And this is, in the short term, and I would say this isn't chaos. This is what happens when you start moving towards efficiencies. Now, there are difficulties. Now, again, whenever you make the shift, it's not like this is going to be all rainbows and butterflies on an individual basis. Collectively, it's going to be better for everyone. And then hopefully that helps globally too, by the way, that helps globally. To do so, but yes, there are these tectonic shifts, and then when you layer that on, we've all realized society's we're going through a shift into what is the economy going to look like for my kids and their kids, and what are the sorts of things are they going to have to be able to be and do to be productive so they can make a living, all those sorts of things, right?
I want to address a few things. So Sally says my society is not changing. South Dakota is the same. I would say imagine if suddenly everybody in South Dakota got a $5,000 check, right? Things would change in South Dakota as well. Now, I'm not saying that I don't know how they're going to change. It's possible lots of people are going to start moving to South Dakota. There are various possibilities. I don't know exactly what those possibilities are going to be, but I do think this is going to affect every place, and I do want to let Michael speak.
Yeah, well, I think that everything that's getting cut out on all the government inefficiencies, it's just creating an opportunity. Hopefully more people have thought about what they would do in this opportunity, but basically I think that there's so many opportunities for people just to revitalize communities through entrepreneurship in lots of different ways, because it's the possibilities of decentralization and stuff are so much better. But the thing that's made life difficult for a lot of people with a lot of really good ideas has been bureaucratic nonsense more so than anything else or whatever. So and there might be a lot of experimentation that happens in the future. Some states, I think there'd probably be a lot of competition between states and between different regions and things. There might be some busts, but like the way that it was, because it just like thinking of the project that I've been starting to work on, like now. I was trying to think of a way that you could fit it into the cracks of the already like bloated system. And now it's like, oh, well, people could just move anywhere and start a business and do what they want or whatever. And, you don't have to.
The bureaucratic bloat. I mean, honestly, I haven't even factored that in.
Yeah.
Like that's the.
But the inflationary aspect of the economy is like, I mean, that's it's just it's put everybody in a weird position. Like, yeah, if you own a home, you're better off. You're certainly better off than people that didn't own a home. But then, like, I'm stuck here with my low interest rate that when we got literally closed on our house, like right before everything locked down. So, which is pretty miraculous.
I really don't know what the financial effects are going to be. I'm guessing the interest rates will go down. I think wages are going to go up, and there's going to be just a lot more wealth in the economy. Yeah. So people like monetary supply is not the same thing as wealth, right? Monetary supply is how much money, how many dollars exist in the economy, and that's not exactly related to how much wealth is in your society.
Yeah.
We are what looks like is going to happen. So there are 4 things you can do with wealth. You can create wealth, you can transfer wealth, you can consume wealth, and you can destroy wealth. Okay. What gets me, and Freerillian said, inefficiency literally makes Jacob want to kill himself. Stupid suffering literally makes me want, like, the stupidity of suffering makes me want to kill myself. Okay. And so when I see wealth being destroyed, like, okay, you're going to consume it. Okay. At least consume it, right? You're going to transfer it to the wrong person. Yeah, I don't like that, right? Some amount of wealth has to be consumed. I like to see wealth produced, but I don't like to see wealth being destroyed, okay? Just for no good reason, stupid suffering makes me literally want to kill myself. Like, I'm not even joking.
Well,
right?
And we've only been talking about one aspect of this, Jacob.
And we're talking about $1 trillion of waste a year. So what's $1 trillion per American, right? We have 300 million Americans. So I'm bad at math. What are we talking about? $300 or $3,000?
3,000. I think that'd be 3,000, right?
1 trillion divided by 300 million, I believe, is 300. Somebody check my math. But just imagine every American gets $300 more that they didn't have before.
And Jacob, you're just focusing on one aspect of it, and that is being more efficient, and quite frankly, the fraud and the embezzlement and all the other crap that's been going on. So you get rid of that. So that's one aspect of it. The other thing you need to attack, which is going to be a key plank of all this, is getting rid of all the insane regulation. Because if you run a business, particularly you're in California. Oh my gosh, Jacob, try and build a home in California. Forget, for fire stuff, like it is, or build a fence. Like, just like they send 3 people out, you got to do this. You start getting rid of regulations, and this stuff has orders of magnitude of efficiencies and what you would call wealth creation and things like that.
If it is actually 3,000, I am afraid of being off by an order of magnitude, because I'm too excited, right? But it like $3,000 a year, right? And yes, Sally is 100% right. None of that is real while we have debt. And Lance is 100% right. The economic effects, like actually putting numbers to the type of efficiency that is possible, like we're really talking about thousands and thousands of dollars coming in of actual wealth, right? Not monetary supply, wealth in our economy happening over the next few years, which will be absolutely wonderful. It will, and like this is really shocking stuff if it's going to happen. Like, well, I do worry that I'm overexcited.
No, listen, there are going to be bumps in the road, but if you think about if when you start adding all this stuff up, so one of the things happened, the Overton window got changed, okay? Like the Overton window has now changed, and here's another Overton window. You don't necessarily need to have income tax. We can eliminate things like property. Seriously, like we say, oh, we got to have it. No. If you don't have a highly inefficient government and the fraud and the theft and the corruption and everything else, all of a sudden you start rethinking things like that. Those things can all be on the table. Like really smart people, the people in Washington won't talk to you that way, but you can still do that. And I think some people talked about disability and something. We can do things like literally we can make sure that there's Medicare and there's Medicaid and there's Social Security. Like we can make sure we do all those things and yet have that possible. We're a long ways away from that. But I think an Overton window has been changed, Jacob. And I think the next thing America really needs to help our European brothers and sisters to do is destroy the EU. Germany needs to be Germany again. Britain needs to be Britain. Like Ireland needs to be Ireland again.
You're muted.
Muted, Jacob.
Jacob, you're muted.
So I asked Grok, what is 3 trillion divided by 300 million? And it told me it's 10,000. So that would mean that, yeah, 1 trillion would be around 3,300. Like, yeah, I have to say, like, this is amazing stuff. Michael, what do you have to say?
I wish I could have caught up to how far you guys are in, but I had to come on to play. So what I'm most curious about, maybe you guys already touched on this, is hypothetical backlash to dismantling larger globalism at play, whether that's the EU or what's going on here locally within America. I mean,
I'm more concerned with a million, at least a million unemployed people who are currently gainfully employed.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely coming. I mean, and there's obviously like a push from the administration of we prefer for those folks to be employed by the private sector.
Yeah, and do you know how that offset happens, Michael? So, for example, you cut like Trump's talking about that these people are coming in to invest. You cut regulation, you make it an advantageous tax situation. You start getting the interest rates down, everything else. All of a sudden, it's going to be a boom of people creating in the new economy, and they'll need people who are smart enough to get a laptop government job. There's going to be things that are needed, not because. Here's the other thing, which is like just pushing paper jobs are fairly replaceable. However, there are tons of jobs that create, and you'd be surprised what they are. As long as you're a true human being and you have to think somewhat creatively in your job, which AI is not doing that. It's just spitting out LLM stuff to you, and it can do facts and it can operate functions. But there's tons of stuff that's still needed. So, ultimately, yes, we need to transition those federal employees need to transition into the economy. And by the way, I'm sick and tired of paying pensions to federal employees because they stole our pensions as a workforce, go back when they stole that from the rest of us. And then we're paying these people these salaries, we can't fire them, and then they get pensions for life while we're sitting out here.
Okay,
No,
so
no more.
so let's play with that for a second. All right. So deportations, or basically, like here's a leaning on businesses can't hire super minimum wage employees as easily now. Also, there's a whole bunch of people in government positions. They need jobs now, right? And so there's a bunch of openings for very low wage jobs. And so there's probably a shift and shuffle that goes on there. I'm curious if this hits the tech sector though. In the last, especially 7 years, I've seen most of the teams that I manage become outsourced remotely to areas like Ukraine, Poland, India. Yeah, the India trend that's been going for about 20. The Eastern Europe and South American, we call it nearshore, right? So like there's a lot of Latin American, South American IT employees that are getting hired now for nearshore because they can be on the same time zone, and their skill sets have raised enough to where we can hire them. So I don't know that that's going to get touched, but there is a whole lot of boots on the ground jobs that I don't know if there's like, it's not like those federal employees are going to like work those jobs, but maybe somehow there's some shifting that happens. I don't know.
Look, anytime you're shifting that much wealth, there are going to be grifters and people, rent seekers, who are going to somehow capture it. There are going to be bubbles. Anytime you shift that much amount of money, it's when it's good enough that like you're creating a lot of wealth, right? So a lot of people are going to be like, hey, kind of like the boom after World War II in the United States, right? So hey, a lot of things are going to go really well, and I'm like, don't be too apocalyptic. At the same time, there are concerns, right? I don't want to see us go down the stupid ways that, for example, the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution went through, or the Maoist Revolution. Those are all possibilities, right? And you have to realize that, like, life. I'm pretty sure that life after. I mean, despite what some people would say, look, life wasn't very good under the Romanovs either. Life wasn't very good being a Chinese colony of what, like, these countries industrializing has been good for at least some people, and you could certainly give me measures in terms of gross domestic product that would make it look better, right? So we don't want this to be simply gross domestic product goes up and there's a lot of material wealth. We want our society to be better functioning. We want people to be healthier, and our community to be wealthier and healthier together, right? But yeah, we are seeing really like shifts I did not dare to hope would be coming true.
Yeah.
That
and Michael,
I get nothing else across. Like, it's happening. Like, I'm
it's
tired of
happening.
winning.
It's happening. Yeah,
Like,
you're going to get too tired of winning. Mr. President, it's too much winning. And I'm going to say, no, we're going to win some more.
This is like, we are living in interesting times. And I have to say, hopefully, if we are the voices of sanity in our society, we will help usher in a better look. I think ARC this year is going to be even more tuned in. And I think ARC this year is actually going to be what the World Economic Forum was last year. That is a huge change. And if Grim Grizz is going to be at ARC, right? He's the new person who suddenly is going to the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Right? And while I love Grim in every way, just as you look at the types of suits that, who was the name of the guy who was the head of WEF? He
Klaus Schwab.
Klaus Schwab, right? Yeah. Like you see him wearing that crazy futuristic thing, and you're like, what are you doing here, and why are you being so weird? People are going to look at Grim and being like, I don't know if I like this.
For better or worse, I think that Peterson is your actual equivalent there.
He may be, but yeah. Grim is the one who's in our circle.
Yeah, right? and totally.
And
fair.
he's our representative to ARC. The new World Economic Forum.
Peterson's little closest inner circle is really tight with some of the leading Western powers right now. They're having dialogue. I mean, that's real. That's happening. McMo, made a kind of offhanded comment about like Doge Bolsheviks. I don't think so. I think this would be like this strikes me as like the same problem was sort of rising up in a way, but instead there's like a voluntarily confronting the problem by a more hierarchical contingent, right? Trying to handle it, because if they fail, then we're in a flattening bureaucracy thing that is pointless, and then out of that has to rise some kind of military authoritarianism out of that. And so this is like the last ditch effort to like really handle it before you get to that stage, I think.
I mean, look, Elon Musk. So I remember Trey before the election was saying, Jacob, aren't you afraid that Trump might actually become some sort of dictator? Like, all of these people are saying, why are you not worried? And I'm like, I'm not worried, not because I trust Trump. I trust that man no further than I can throw him, right? But because he doesn't have that level of competence, and he doesn't have the crew, right? Because it takes at least tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people to actually run a government. Elon Musk has walked in and taken the rings of power in ways that I simply did not think was possible.
Well, he's an oracle, right? He's the oracle to the king.
The thing with Elon's whole thing, and it's funny because I saw some people saying like, oh, did you know that like Elon's not really a genius because he didn't really like Tesla, they're stupid, but because Tesla made all their money not by the things they make, but by selling carbon credits to all these other stupid companies. And it's like, no, he's the biggest genius because he saw how everybody, including people like Bill Gates, who's obscenely rich, think about money as if it is like this actual thing, and saw like, oh, it's just money. You just make more money and you get to do whatever you want in the world. And he went and made the most money so that he could do what he wanted in the world.
That's part of it, but there's all when people talk about startup culture stuff. Okay, so in my 20s, I spent a lot of it grinding like working 110 hours a week kind of thing. And so a lot of that would be like obscene amounts of Red Bull and 5-hour powers. And like I'm grinding 72 hours at a time, no sleep, right, in order to finish a product and like launch something. And like, that's what this guy's been doing. He has been like sleeping in the building, whatever business or initiative that he's trying to work at, getting 20-year-olds to come there, do that with him, and just like, completely throw themselves into it, working day and night. It's just constant 24 hours. And so he's willing to work harder and put more pressure on those young guys that are willing to self-select and do that kind of crazy shit. So they're building crazy programs, running data analytics, and so that provides this like new oracle.
LLMs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is
They're using LLMs that now are trained on every email every federal government employee has written that's still in the system.
Well, yeah, and you say even if somebody, not everybody's obviously as intense as Elon, but the thing is that like real creativity has been stifled so much by the presence, and it's not just in government; it's infected like corporate America too. This whole thing of like, whoa there, young guys, slow down, don't get ahead of yourself, like. Just take it all in. We're here to milk this system, and you have people milking the system at every stinking layer of this huge behemoth. And eventually, where does that milk ultimately derive its source from? It's like normal people and their, their
This
meager
is a
lives.
dam breaking. I mean, there is a dam that has broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, unless I'm wrong, which I've been wrong before, but everything I know about how government runs, everything I know about how politics and law and economics function tells me there something very, very different is happening at this moment, that the legacy media, and I've like I said, I was listening. It was that Ezra Klein. I mean, that's the New York Times, right? Ezra Klein. With the full force of the New York Times, said this morning, "Don't believe your lying eyes." And maybe Ezra Klein is right, or Jacob is right.
Jacob, they've been telling us that for years. You know what I mean? Like everyone's understand. They've been asking people to do that for 8, 9, 10 years, right? And the jig is up with, like, I'm just going to tell you, Ezra Klein, other than that small little group, nobody's listening to him. Like, nobody's listening to him.
Well,
no. See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of family who are doctors and lawyers, right? I'm Jewish. I have a lot of family who are doctors and lawyers, and they go to work in the morning and they spend all day not doom scrolling and not reading whatchamacallit. They spend all day seeing patients or doing what doctors and lawyers do, working very hard, right? And they go home and maybe they watch half an hour of CNN and they think, well, MSNBC is on the left, and Fox is on the right. And so I'll watch half an hour of CNN.
You do know those numbers are, Jacob. You can even look at who's watching them in the key demographics. Very small. I know you know these people, Jacob, and I do too. No, I do too. I have some of these people in my life that are freaking out. But that number, like,
no, these people are not freaking out. Like my cousins who are doctors, they're not freaking out. But their source of news is the normal sources of news. And now, if I am right, we are going to see shifts that my cousins who are doctors, suddenly their work is going to change, because they're not going to be typing right now. When you go to the doctor, I'm if you're with an HMO, I'm sure you see your doctor walks into the room and he's typing the entire time, right? Well, that's gonna change because
How is this? Well, I would just say that some of that fundamental change was going to happen regardless of what we're talking about, which is this sea change that's happened. Like I've seen people have pointed the comment over here, and it's true. They're like, there are no moderate Democrats anymore because they actually shifted over to some extent, and I think that's true, right? And Jacob, my biggest concern is still that we don't have transparency around our elections. And there are certain places where it's still very tenuous whether or not they've stopped the ballot stuffing in certain key places and so on and so forth. And that's another thing. So how could they stop it? Is they could stop it, with respect to that. What did happen, and I think this
Lance,
fundamental shift.
Who's they?
Pardon me?
Who's they?
Democrats.
Okay.
Democrats. Now, don't get me wrong. The Washington Republicans, the smarmy neocons, and the Mitch McConnells of the world, and those sorts of people, they don't want this change either because they're part of the uniparty, and they haven't done anything to try and protect elections. Although some of that stuff's starting to happen, and I think that dam that's broke has actually become too big to rig, and that's what we saw. And I think we can see that kind of moving forward. But there's a lot of bumps in the road and everything else. But I think one of the things that I have faith in, like you came in at the very beginning and you were talking about really H-1B and sort of offshoring and all those other sorts of things. We can incentivize through tax break, all sorts of different things. We can incentivize hiring and onshoring jobs, right? We haven't. Our political leaders have not been doing that. But I think now there was the big fight that there was a falling out with Vivek when he had his ex post and everything else about.
But hold on Sunday nights they had a podcast and Vivek was.
Oh no, they're fine. They're fine.
Yeah,
no, I'm talking about Vivek had a bit of a falling out. No, he had a bit of falling out with some MAGA folks when he basically said all Americans.
Oh, the H-1B, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to be. Let me just address some of the chat comments. Like, what am I fearing? There's a reason why I'm using the Antichrist language. I'm telling you there are dragons because I don't know if it's a snake. I don't know if it's a lion. I don't know if it's. I'm saying there be dragons here because I don't know, but. There be dragons here. Okay? We are moving into a situation of dragons. And McMo is completely right. Jacob upset, Jacob happy. Jacob, there's a reason I was an insurance broker and I loved being an insurance broker because I spent all day thinking about what could go wrong in people's lives. Right? I would tell my clients, as a risk manager, my job is to be the Stephen King of your life and imagine all the horrible things that could happen in your life and try to make sure it doesn't happen. That's the type of person Jacob is, right? Jacob's always the type of person who's like, there be dragons. And so I have to be like, what? Hey, Jacob, stop worrying so much.
Well, let's play on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause here's what I see. I see, some Apollonian characteristics. I'm using that language to understand this from a little bit of a pagan lens. Okay, so there's beauty and vitality and family, right? So those things are there, right? You see the energy around those things all over the right-leaning populist thing that's happening, right? And to me, this breaks down for the larger West between basically right-leaning populists and left-leaning globalists. That's the map, right? That's the dividing line. So everybody seems to fall on one side of that fence or not. So then the right leaning, the scary thing about the right leaning, if you have that Apollonian thing, is that the disgust mechanisms can kick off, right? And then anything that doesn't fit your beauty map, you want to extinguish. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case, right? There's a degree of that, but what you still have in, especially with the like Trump sphere, is the leave the edges of the field wild thing. So like you'll see the LGB, right? And they're like, drop the QT, right? We can leave the margins, right? That's okay, but the exception can't become the rule anymore. That's done, right? So I'm optimistic, but I am worried in the same way because, like fashion, what's fashionable, right, has a relation to fascism, right?
So I have to say, so I'm sure I know more trans people than basically everybody else. I know dozens of trans people, okay? And I have to say, they have become a scapegoat. They have become a real scapegoat. Well, no, there's one person in this community who knows more trans people than I do, which is Gage, because Gage, who is on the board of Fountain of Comfort, hello people, I have a Fountain of Comfort stream later today, Christianity on the Spectrum. Please watch. Michael's friend. Do you actually know the person behind?
I haven't gotten to talk to him in person yet. I just talk a lot on Twitter and on their Discord and little bits and stuff.
Okay, so I'm having a discussion today, right? So Gage has actually, he did his internship at a gender clinic, right? Leading groups and doing private counseling with trans kids, right? And there's a lot of people who are like, there's no such thing as a trans kid. And I'm like, hold your horses here. Gage is a good guy who believes in science and is a Christian and knows all the stuff we talk about. And he's dealing with trans kids. Okay? So don't tell me these people don't exist. These people exist, and they're going to a clinic Gage was working at, and Gage is a good person trying to help these people, okay? So don't, like, that's the type of thing that, yeah, it's a real worry, and it's happening.
And this was the disaster of the left-wing movement. So when they lost the normies in the middle is when they started pushing for transitioning of minors. People like myself, my wife, everything else included, everything else. Man, you want to make some decision when you're 18, 19, 20, whatever. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But they elevated that issue, and it's the direct. Well, my position is that's your deal, man. I'm an American, right? It's free. You get to be an adult. You get to make decisions in this country. And so the people to the blame aren't the people who sat there and ultimately, and particularly moms in particular, you're going to hear a lot of this. It's like, one was the COVID stuff and what they started doing with their kids. And then it was Drag Queen Story Hour. And it was finding out that we were mutilating kids before they were adults and could make their own decision. It's just common sense. So I think where we're getting to this, I think, so I particularly don't know a single trans person. However, I do know a lot of gay and lesbian people in my life. And quite frankly, I ended up knowing a lot of gay and lesbian Christians who actually are pretty conservative in nature. Like there's a spectrum of gay people. Or Rick Grinnell, dissent. He's the Treasury Secretary. He's a gay man.
I've met Rick Grinnell and his husband, and we exchanged emails. So look.
And I would just say they have been very frustrated in their own community. Yeah. With the kind of extreme portrayal and everything else and all the stuff that was you had to be allied and everything else with the frustration. I would just say that, yes, those things exist. They don't exist at the freakish level, and I'm using that word, the spike that happened now. Like, who was the gal from Sex and the City? I just saw all her kids are trans and her sister kids are trans and everything else. The statistical probability of that being true are zero.
Yeah.
So I think the empathy and compassion is there, but that was part of the tactic for the color revolution. Like, this stuff was very tactical, and they overplayed their hand. And why did we have this dam break? That was one of the big issues, particularly for moms in general, because mama bears rose up and said, we got to stop. No, we're done with this. Listen, I don't even like this guy, Trump. I don't like the way he talks to people, everything else. But whatever this is, we're done with that. We're just done.
Yeah. A lot of moms.
I mean, my whole thing is, okay, let's realize we're human, right? Let's realize Elon Musk is not the Messiah, okay? And
Yep.
let's
And he's not a
realize-
king. And he's not a king.
Well, yeah, hopefully. I'm a little concerned, right? Because frankly, I think if you let Elon Musk do whatever he wants, he'll be like, we really all need to go to Mars, and I'm not sure that's a good idea. I think he might have, his own human predilections for things, and like, I'm willing to let him play with going towards Mars. I actually think it's a pretty good idea to like space exploration and stuff. I'm happy with that, but my whole thing is proportion, right?
Proportion.
Proportion, relevance realization, hierarchy, right? Value judgments, right? And hopefully, I mean, what I've tried to create with this channel and this community is a place where there's more signal than noise, where we're making sense of things, we're talking about relevant things, right? Most of my channel is about the Bible. You can look at my channel, you can look how many hours I am, like, if I just talked politics all the time, I would have a lot more subscribers than I do. I would have a lot more people paying attention to my channel than I do, right? I'm trying to put first things first and important things. God, G-D, God, not G-O-D, God. G-D, God is at the top of my values hierarchy, right? And hopefully all of that has been a good thing for the past 4 years of people who've been getting involved in my community, for us to trust each other, to understand, and to work together with in understanding what's going on. And part of the reason I'm doing this stream is I want people like Grim Grizz and everybody else to realize, to the degree you believe Jacob understands politics, things are really changing right now.
Yeah, well, so you know how Peterson talks about how there's women who will they're looking for certain kinds of attributes of like the bad guy, right? They're looking for someone that's dangerous, right? But that's not so dangerous that it's dangerous to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the middle of that right now, right? We're in the middle of that where we're going, there needed to be like strong masculine things happening here, right? Dad needed to come home and set order to the house. The question is, right, are we the bride, right, that's going to make the mistake, right, of letting a malevolent actor, right, seep in? Or is this someone that's dangerous to China, dangerous to outside forces, dangerous to predators, but not dangerous to you?
Yeah.
Right? And so this is where men at large have to be thinking about the knight idea, right? What it means to be a knight, right? What the implications of that long term have been, right? Being willing to die for, but not persecute, right? So there's a lot of this at play, like where we fall on some of this, because there are absolutely pissed off, malevolent actors. They're mad about the trans stuff. They're mad about the last 10. They're mad about post-sexual revolution changes, and they would absolutely burn lots of things to the ground and go after people in a really dark way, right? And so the larger sphere that we play around with and people that we talk to on these channels, we're the kind of folks that are in the breach, right, to hold back that tide.
I hope. Yeah. So Stephanie says, I want to pose a question. How to respond to my lib Christian friends who claim being MAGA is at its core unchristian? I will say what I've always said on this channel. This is a non-Zionist channel, despite the fact that I get accused of being a Zionist constantly, because my synagogue, if I'm running the synagogue, there will never be even an American flag. And I salute the American flag. I don't salute the Israeli flag, right? In my synagogue, no American flags and certainly no Israeli flags. And to the degree that anybody is bringing their MAGA hat into their church, like, I'm not a Christian myself, according to most people's understanding of Christian, although I have to say, I still believe if you define Christian as somebody who follows the teachings of Jesus, then the only Christians I know are Orthodox Jews. If Donald Trump gets to sit on the dais of your church,
yeah, we're already there though. We're already there. Low church Protestantism, that there is some degree of that, right? Is it 0.1%? Is it 5%? I don't know, right? But I love those folks right now because what they represent to me is a contagion of the kind that Solzhenitsyn represented. Of we're not going to lie anymore. This hat, right? This Trump thing, saying that I'm a Trump supporter, I'm not willing to lie anymore, and that matters. That matters.
Yeah, I mean, it's just this thing that there's a lot of these people who are just fed up of having the liberal Christians tell them to feel bad for loving things that are obviously good, like their own families and their own children. That when you read the Bible as a complete book and don't just single out the social justice version of like the Sermon on the Mount, you see very much that God blesses and increases and all these things, and there's the good and the bad, and not everybody gets the same fate. You may have a life full of suffering, but the thing is that this liberal, when it gets Christianized or whatever, but it doesn't ever want anybody to improve. It wants them to stay a victim. And that's the problem why their party falls apart, because the standbys of the party, like the working class and the black people and all this, it's like, yeah, you're in. So now that you're in, we need to go get these other people in. And then when everybody's in, then we can do the change. And as soon as anybody's material life starts to improve, then you're not loyal to the base anymore. So it's like this
is where Peterson talking about the spirit of Cain converges with James Lindsay's critique of like basically anybody that's claiming victim status.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the spirit of Cain thing, right? Is if you're just like some victim, whether you're left or right or globalist or populist, whatever you are, if you think that you're just some victim, right, then there's a certain kind of evil cloud thing that's hovering over you, right, and it bears the same kind of fruit.
Look, I think we basically were in a system where a lot of people thought, to be political is to be Republican, and to be neutral is a neutral Christian, especially in the main line, is to be a Democrat. And you saw a lot of that where, like talking about custodianship of like Meg Basham's book really explains how that was. There was a capture of a lot of churches, right? Which, again, I have to say, that is reason for people to start thinking about the churches they're in, right? If your church was captured by that type of thing, there's a problem there, right? There's a reason why the synagogue I barely ever go to is an Orthodox synagogue, right? So, like, yeah, let's relevance realization. In an hour, I am going to have a Mesilat Yesharim thing of the Ramchal, where we are going to be talking about ancient Jewish wisdom, right? And that's really, really important to me. And guess what? Very few of you are going to stick around for that, right? Right now, there's apparently over 30 people watching. I'm not going to get 30 people for that. But that's steak. That's not the dessert.
I'll leave the computer on. I'll let it run.
Can we hit on what Pickens said in the chat there?
Sure.
So,
which one? This one?
So yeah. So this is what I think that Jonathan Peugeot is getting at, right? And Grimm to some degree, right? About LARPing hard, right? And Peterson being the fool before the master. So you got all these men who haven't had like real good male figures, right? Marriage is breaking down all over the place. Dads don't know how to be dads because they don't know how to self-sacrifice themselves for the love of the family, right? Everybody's selfish. Marriages are breaking down. So then there's a bunch of kids that have been raised who don't have like good male models, you know what it is. So now they are reacting to this thing, and they're having to sort of pretend, right? And they're having to LARP through it. And so like LARPing to be a knight, right? The kind of man who, you know, what McMo said here, you know, I'm not sure. Well, so you LARP to be a knight. What does it mean to be a knight? Like you defend the bride, right? You defend the woman, right?
Yeah, this is the comment you're talking about. I just want to address this.
Yeah.
Less than 10% of Jews are Orthodox Jews. Yes, 90% of Jews are in what they call themselves Reform. Like they named themselves after the Protestant Reformation. I'm sorry. I have to go back to there are problems with the Reformation that need to be dealt with. Okay. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the term woke right is a problem. I think anybody who's paying attention has to always worry about the pendulum swinging too far. I think hopefully what we have in this community is enough of a structure and a hierarchy that we will not only be able to withstand the waves of the many waters, right? But in fact, we will be able to rise with it. And I think that is definitely a possibility. That's certainly what I'm trying to do with my channel and with Fountain of Comfort and with our Los Angeles group here, right? But like, yeah, that part of that, a large part of that is recognizing Elon Musk is not my Messiah. Like the Yanuka, he might be the Messiah. Like his picture is on my wall. Elon Musk's picture is never going on my wall, despite the fact he's doing great things. I am very grateful for.
So what that brings to mind for me is like a fractal pattern of reality here. Okay, so the lifeguard, right, that saves me out of the water, right, in a sense, right, it like saved me as a Messiah. So there's levels of this, right, but the full incarnational essence of what Messiah would be. Okay, Jacob and I aren't going to be eye to eye on that. But
you don't like the Yanuka? Have you even listened to any of his? Actually, very weirdly, when I translated part of one of his speeches, my channel got a lot of views, so now I have to finish that. I took 3 hours and got 20 minutes in, but so you might like the Unica more than you think.
Are you Messiah pumping your channel?
I am. My channel has always been messianic. My channel has always been messianic, and we have one of the people who I am incredibly. Should I play this? I'm going to have to play this.
Midwestuary 2025, August 22nd through the 24th in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderklay, Rod Dreer, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.
And
Yeah,
while
more
they made
details.
the pre-registration website completely ridiculously silly,
Whatever, Jacob. I put out my own
disaster.
video. I noticed you didn't play my video. I mean, there's some irony to the smooth jazz video. I still feel like you're not getting some of the sense.
You didn't send me a different video. This is the only.
No, I mean, I didn't send it to you, but I put out a new video today announcing that registration.
I haven't seen it. Sorry.
I am deeply insulted. I actually think it came out since you've been live streaming, so don't feel too bad.
Sorry.
The name, it's like the spirit things you guys are calling this. What are you calling it? The Fellowship of the Spirit. It's very Tolkien. Was that intentional?
Fellowship
Tolkien?
of the Ring.
I mean,
Jacob will definitely not be in Chicago.
Oh, yes, you will. I look forward to seeing you there. Yes, you will. You're coming. If I have to grab you by the scruff of your messianic shirt and drag you from Los Angeles, I will.
You're definitely going to have to pay for everything yourself because I'm definitely not paying.
Although I'd appreciate if you could buy a benefactor ticket. That contributes $30 to the benefactor fund.
Benefactor, $30. I told you 500. 1,000 and 5,000.
No, I took your idea. I just said that. I thought that's $30. All we need is to pay for Grim Grizz and a couple other people. We'll be fine.
Zero clue.
I mean, I have sold. I think I've sold over 10 benefactor tickets today. So that's $300. That's one registration.
Why didn't you make the benefactor ticket $500?
Because then no one would do it.
Why don't you try?
Well, I could make a super benefactor ticket, I guess.
Please.
Would you come, Jacob? Would you come if I made a super benefactor ticket of $500?
Sorry, but that's not good enough. But how about you do that and see if Jacob's
right?
What
if I made a $1,000 ticket? Would you buy that then? If it was $1,000, would you buy it?
I would be surprised if you sell less than $500.
$2,000. Will you come if I make you pay $2,000 instead?
Sam, is there a place to donate?
I'm not coming.
I should make a place to donate. That actually is a very good idea. Michael in the bottom right.
If you actually listened to and what's a good idea? The meme coin, Jacob meme coin. What?
No, that we should just have a place to openly donate. On the website. That's a low-hanging obvious fruit. Good idea. We can do that.
And the $500 is a low-hanging obvious fruit.
All right. The Jacob Federacci benefactor level. I will
call it the Jacob Federacci benefactor level and see what happens.
The Midwestuary Sovereign Wealth Fund, Sam. Set it up.
Sovereign Wealth Fund. Exactly. Yes.
Hey, if I was going to make a meme coin, it would definitely be called Baltars. Because Ball of Tarsus, we have coins of Ball of Tarsus. So yes, my meme coin. All
right, but we were talking about politics, right? I mean, has there been a more transformative month in American politics that didn't involve like a war?
No.
Yeah.
No. This is revolutionary. Well, I'm guessing you didn't watch what I've been saying since the beginning, Sam.
I caught 5-10 minute snippets here and there, but no.
But what I have been saying is when I was young, and getting my JD and Masters of Public Administration at USC, I would dream of things like this happening. This was my hope.
Like a
in the
fever dream
world.
fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be something
And
like this happening.
And yesterday I was too emotional and I was crying and I was too worried to actually have a stream about what is going on. And today, from everything I am seeing, like the type of success that I did not dare give myself hope, that the types of things I did not dare to hope would come true, right, are coming true.
Which is basically what Yarvin is saying too.
Like I am not.
I mean,
joking when
it
I'm
shows
saying-
that democracy actually works, or at least kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh,
all the
this
people
is-
who's like, oh, your vote doesn't matter. What's the point of voting if you don't ever get what you want
the
from your vote
woke
or whatever?
bros, the woke bros are going to have to recognize that all the Curtis Yarvin stuff was wrong. The woke right is going to be destroyed by the actual facts of the matter, because all of their accelerationist bullshit, all of that has shown. Right now, what we need to be talking about is what Peter Thiel was surprisingly talking about a month ago, and I was like wondering, why is he talking about the Antichrist so much? Now, what we need to start talking about is the Antichrist.
I thought that this was a messianic channel, not an anti-messianic channel, but
It is a messianic channel.
I was having.
If the Yanuka was in the situation that King Elon is right now, I would be I like that would be wonderful. If tomorrow suddenly Elon says he found a new religious guru and it's the Yanuka, and suddenly he takes a Noahide vow, like I'm gonna be like, dude, we're here, right? But I don't see that happening yet.
So, I mean, what's going on is like at the scale of like almost like a small civil war in terms of the amount of billions of dollars and the number of people's
Trillions
and livelihoods. I mean, so far it's in like, I would say the hundreds of billions have been touched so far, but it's only been like 3.5 weeks or something like that.
RFK Jr. is getting confirmed today.
Right.
CMS.
I know. You and I are both
CMS.
in healthcare, Jacob. I know. Like,
And you know what an LLM can do to CMS, Sam? Like, are we talking about 80% reduction in spending on Medicare?
Well, so I mean, what would be the biggest obvious when I will start to be like, okay, where is this? The second coming is on the verge. Is if they allow Medicare and Medicaid to competitively bargain for prescription drugs. Like that, I feel like is the lowest hanging multi-$100 billion a year fruit on the Doge tree. Is be like, Medicare and Medicaid have been forbidden from using their monopsonistic buying power to bargain down the price of drugs. So America pays like 3, 4, 5, 10 times or even more sometimes the amount for the same prescription drug that say like a socialist government in Europe or Australia or wherever will pay, because they're like, well, we're going to use our bargaining power as a big country to bargain down the price. Okay, America, the biggest bargaining player of them all.
I'm gonna up you one in nerd factor, right? I don't like that formulation. I think the formulation needs to be that we set insurance levels. Like right now, you can buy bronze, silver, gold, platinum insurance at dollars per adjusted life years.
Yeah.
And just set that dollars per adjusted life years. I think that would completely change the pricing structure of
Yeah.
medicine in ways that would accomplish what you want in much better ways than, frankly,
I mean, I don't think that's mutually exclusive at all with the competitive bargaining power for prescription drugs.
I don't like government set prices.
Well, I'm not saying government set prices. I'm saying the government buys the drugs in mass from the drug companies, and then you are purchasing them basically
government purchases.
But it's basically saying when we Medicare or we Medicaid buy whatever drug it is, we're paying you this
the
price.
weeds of health insurance, which I would love to get into with you, because both of us know things nobody listening does. But we're talking about trillions of dollars of savings.
Yeah.
So I worked at one of the large health insurance providers and the data and analytics team for a little while. And so we're doing data science on prescription use and cost and these things. I had to leave pretty quickly after I got in deeper. But like, I think the Nicole Shanahan blob principality, right, is like, there's no settled science, and we're going to pull apart all of this, right? And RFK is their champion in this thing, right? Where it's not even distribution. It's like, we are going to completely dismantle what everybody thinks they know, right? Like, that's how deep it's going to go.
I cannot overemphasize for people who are listening. If we had a civil war, the civil war is over, and nobody's noticed yet.
Yeah, I think civil war started November 2020. That was civil war.
I think, Jacob, I think a lot of us agree.
Historians are going to look at this and say precursors, the Civil War started 2015, started whatever. Like, yes, we've been building up to this, and this is the actual Black Swan event that what's his name, Nassim Taleb, talks about, which is something that nobody actually could have predicted, that afterwards everybody looks back and says, well, of course there would be a Black Swan, right? So yes, this is a Black Swan. This is an actual Black Swan event. Things have changed. My model of the world I live in today is very different from what it was on Friday. And to the degree that you believe I have an accurate capacity to model the world better than just random guess, things are a-changing, people.
Yeah, my someone close to me works with a conglomerate of blue. I'm just gonna say blue, like blue church nonprofits, political factions. So whether it's 501c3 or just all over the board. So here's a lot of those. So on conference calls, here's where the projects are. Where's the donations coming from? It's all in utter chaos. Everything's dismantled. All the initiatives, and believe me, in 2021, at the beginning of 2021, I was bombarded with projects profiling J6ers and creating public indexes of seditionists and all these databases. Like, they were all over the place. I was prompted to work on so many.
I don't think either one of you were here when I discussed this video, which I just linked in the chat. It's from the Brookings Institution. I was listening to it last night with my mouth agape. This is the Brookings Institution, people. If you know lawyers speak and you're listening to that lawyer speaking, you are going to be like, oh my God. I can't wait until Lance listens to this video, because the discussion.
What's the too long didn't listen?
What?
What's the too long didn't listen?
Too long didn't listen. The courts are not going to be able to stop this.
I'll use that video in my testing for the thislittlecorner.com.
I guess I'm probably too plugged into that, but that's all this stuff was on the table, and particularly like with respect to Chevron and everything else. And by the way, I mean, presidents, it used to be normal where they could wipe people out and rehire and put their people in. Obama did it day one. The Biden, like, this is normal stuff. Like, you can go in and wipe out people and put your people in. That's totally normal. It's only when it came time for someone who wasn't part, who is the outsider, right? And then the other thing is that, like, the ability, particularly at post Chevron too, like this is a big thing, like the ability to actually make these structural permanent changes. I guess I would say that none of this surprised me. What has surprised me, though, I would say this, Jacob, is I knew they were going to tackle this stuff. Just the organization and the sheer speed with which they're just going after everything is impressive. And by the way, that's what you do. Like, when you come in, you buy the company, you possible takeover, you get in and you start making things happen. And
so that's the outworking that Elon's doing. They can't keep up with it
so fast. I mean, I read last night. I read the brief asking for a stay, right? And the one that people are talking, like, they're not even filing. They're not even filing because there's nobody withstanding. It's all falling apart. I was expecting stay after stay. I was expecting TRO after TRO. That's temporary restraining order. Nothing. They have nothing. The deep state was a paper tiger. Elon and a bunch of young tech autists, right? Autistic 20-year-olds are just burning the entire thing down.
Well, but it's more than that. Like, so that is one piece. Like, it's multifaceted. That's one piece, which is the cost cutting, just getting in, doing that. Also giving them, rightfully so, this is what happens when you take over a corporation, root access to just basically whack people off and take away their stuff. That's totally appropriate, by the way, to do those sorts of things. But it's hitting on every level. I mean, it's like getting rid of this and getting rid of that and appointing this. I mean, it's just, they're hitting them across the entire breadth.
Yeah.
This isn't thought in 2 or 4 years we're going to win another election and reverse this. There is no reversing what is going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they were going to come in with a surgeon scalpel, but this is a forest fire. And instead of doing the, we'll carefully look through the USAID budget one project at a time and be like, not that one, no. But like, okay, that fine, that one, no, right? It's not that. It's like, actually, USAID gone.
This
right?
This is root access.
Well, and that's how you do it, though, because the problem is, like Elon mentioned it on his Spaces last night where he was talking with Vivek, which is, if you have a worm, you take the worm out. But when you realize it's just all worms, and there might be a little apple there, the point is that you do. The other thing is, like, there's 400, we don't even know how many agencies there are. It's 470, 90. We probably need maybe 50, 60 truly, right? We probably need only about 50 or 60. And so, what you do is you just cut it off and then make the case why something has to come back.
RJ, you have the TLDR of the stream correct. Harnessing the power of TISM, only Peter Thiel could have predicted this. Wild stream. Yes, that's the TLDR here, right? What is going on is I did not dare to hope. And like, they're not changing the apps on the phone. They're installing a new OS.
Yeah.
Right. It's you went from flip phones to iPhone. Like when Steve Jobs got up, and I don't know if you've ever watched that, when he introduced, I was working for Sprint at the time, so we were in cell phones and phone stuff. When he came out and showed what the iPhone would do, it was like, holy crud, like unbelievable.
Well, I think that analogy works, right? Because you got Steve Jobs playing, right?
was
And
losing
that kind of executive power, is the Yarvin point on FDR. The executive, like our democracy elects people to do different types of roles. We do have a bureaucratic like democracy function thing with the House and the Senate, but we have forgotten about executive powers and what that really looks like, right? And it's very masculine, right?
Yeah.
And so now it's actually being asserted, and everybody's like, holy shit, because we haven't really seen it post World War II since FDR.
Mm-hmm. I think, Michael, you sort of said it's like dad's coming home and he's cleaning house or something like that earlier in the stream. I'm like, that's exactly what it feels like. It's like daddy's home. He's upset at what he sees and he's not messing around, and he's got everyone's attention, and it's too scary to even know how to respond yet.
The Ezra Klein, I keep on saying the Ezra Klein podcast from today. The beauty of it was it's 10 minutes long, highly produced, right? He worked on this. And I was like, oh my God, this is his message. And it's don't believe your lying eyes.
Yeah. Are you paying attention to Emily Jasinski?
No, who's that?
So that's the blonde girl on Breaking Points. She also does stuff with Unheard, the Undercurrent.
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So Ezra and her have a relationship now, and they've done a podcast. They're talking. That's really interesting to me, right? Because
I think she's too mainstream. I don't think she's with what's going on. I don't think her and Sagar and Jati both have been incredibly disappointing to me. I think they failed to capture the moment. If you want to know what's going on, the only people with their hair on fire adequately has been Wired, Wired magazine. They're the only ones who've appropriately had been discussing how their hair is on fire. And like Pod Save America, I was waiting for them to come out today. Nothing. The Daily, nothing. Kara Swisher, nothing. They don't even understand what's going on.
Yeah, but think about this. One of the things that I've been thinking about how that relates to what we've seen here is a lot of those people are blue church members, like woke church members. I mean, we know that, we talk about it. That's their religion. This is so fundamentally shifted things on people. There's going to be certain people haven't deconstructed yet, but there will be. I'm not going to say they're going to become populist or anything else.
They're Wile E. Coyote that's run off the cliff and is like doing this right now.
Yeah, it's Baghdad Bob. It's Baghdad Bob.
I don't know what that means.
So when the Iraq War, when we took over Iraq, there was Baghdad Bob was the information minister who was you could watch him in real life saying, "Oh, there's no troops," and behind him there were troops coming into Baghdad, and he was like, "There are no troops in Baghdad," right? And that is what's going on.
Yeah, and I think the perfect response, I'll go back to J.D. Vance, and this is the response. I don't really care, Margaret. Like you can chaos, this is whatever, fascist. Don't care. We don't care. We're moving forward. You don't get it. We're moving forward.
So Batsani, the Wired, the Dockstar boys, yes, they did. Do you know what the result of that was? First of all of these boys are up for a presidential medal of freedom, and I want if Trump knew what he was doing, he would give each one of these boys a presidential medal of freedom today. But he doesn't understand what's going on.
Well, I mean, the strategy seems to be move so fast that no one can even keep up to be even able to pay attention enough to stop.
The boomers have no clue what's going on.
So here's the deal. What if you would talk to special operation folks or whatever, you talk about military tactics, okay? What do? You grab the momentum. You just keep
You
keep your
disorient your enemy.
You keep
and
your enemy
them
on your
their
heels.
back.
You keep
Yeah.
flashing. You get this whatever they can't orient themselves to fight back, and you hit them here. You just the point is the most. I never realized this, but the greatest thing that ever happened were the shenanigans they pulled around 2020. Because it allowed, and then all the crap they did to Trump, which gave him the people that would come behind not Trump, but we're against you.
The 4-year gap was really important for Trump.
Yeah.
They screwed
God
themselves.
knows what he's doing. Like when in 2020, I be in faith. I had to say Gamzula Tova. This is also for the good. And I had to say, Kol Rahmana Avid Latav Avid, everything that the merciful does, he does for the good, right? And I cannot, and even like the assassination attempts,
Yeah.
right? Like
Worse.
I don't like.
Yeah.
God is good. God is good.
It's a perfect storm.
Yeah.
So the 4 years, the assassinate, the winding down of COVID, the skepticism has gone with that. The existential threats about nuclear war with Russia, the assassination attempts, the weirdness of whatever was happening in the Democratic Party with the primary and swapping out Kamala.
COVID.
Yeah.
COVID was big.
Yeah.
Big.
I will tell you, we were having, and I just have talked to people. The visceral picture of Trump standing up with blood on his face, fight, shifted, and so many people are like, regardless of what you think about this, and Trump is not our savior, no one believes that. But what it was is, under fire, he showed true fight, grit, all the things you'd want to see.
It was a mini death and resurrection. Right?
Yeah.
It had that symbolic shape to what happened, and it hit. I remember that. I mean, I talked about this on your stream before. It hit me at a level, like I started tearing up when I was like looking at my phone, like, is this real? Why am I hearing about this on Twitter? Where's the New York Times notification, right? What's going on? Why is this real? I'm like, it's real. And I was like getting choked up in tears.
So when I saw that at first, I didn't know if he was dead or not. So my son texted me and says they shot Trump. So I go on immediately Twitter, and there's a video, and I clicked on it, and it was where he was there, and he looked to his head. I didn't know if he was alive or dead when I first saw the video. And then I saw him get up and do the fight. I'm just going to tell you, regardless of what that was, those were feelings in it. I don't know what that was, but it was incredible.
Yeah.
Well, to Jacob's point, this is the risk of Antichrist.
This is the risk of Antichrist.
Because Antichrist in Revelation also gets wounded, appears dead, and comes back. The Revelation also predicts that about the Antichrist, because it's the false imitation of the death and resurrection motif, right?
I'm just happy to be talking. Like, I don't actually believe in Antichrist. I think it's what Christian narrative. So God has it for us now until the truth comes out, which is Orthodox Judaism. I hate to tell you, but like right now the narrative, and it's so funny, Peter Thiel, I'm like, why is Peter Thiel talking about Antichrist suddenly? But he was, and again, he's being prescient.
Rene Girard talks a lot about Antichrist, and
Yes,
Peter Thiel loves
does.
Rene Girard. So that's like at least
top of mind.
part of the explanation of why Peter Thiel's talking about it, but not that's the whole explanation.
And I have to go back to saying I do believe trans people are being scapegoated.
Actually, not only is that responsible for it, Sam, him speaking to that gentleman at Hoover Institute, the last time that they talked together was going deep on Peter Thiel and Girard, right? So that's right at play there.
Yeah.
Well, Thiel, the whole Thiel Vance connection too. I mean, like, they're really good friends, and
Vance is deep in on Girard.
So is Rod Dreher and JD Vance are good friends. Yes. Another reason why Jacob is very excited to come to our conference this coming summer. But I feel like, in a certain sense, Trump is cleaning up his own house, and pretty soon he'll be somewhat satisfied with the work they've done in DC. And then it'll be time to turn outwards to the world. And that will be the next level of shocking in terms of, I think, the big things that could really change.
Look, I know the Canadians don't like this talk, but I could really see that border kind of.
I was arguing that on the BOM Discord server back in like 2018.
Trump
that
just
made no sense why
Sam
Canada
just wants
wasn't a state.
Sam just wants Alberta. He just wants to start with Alberta.
The strategy, Lance, is Alberta first. You offer Alberta statehood because they have the strongest incentive to become a state, because they could pay way less taxes, export more oil, lower regulations, drill baby drill, etc. And then Canada suddenly has a huge budget hit because they lose their cash cow. And then that forces the rest of Canada to either do extreme budget cuts or join the United States. That's the 1-2 punch of how you get Canada.
So
Alberta first, the rest second.
Just coming back to a little bit ago. All right. So what I'm watching play out, and what I'm really curious about right now, is if the tech right are going to listen to the trad cats, and Peter Thiel is at the precipice of that. Right.
Well, I was in Silicon Valley last week. Actually, I had dinner with Vanderclay Monday night, and I was at a Google work trip. And so I'm just like talking, listening, scoping out what like actual real Google people think. And I think that they are, some of them more than others, some of them are knowingly happy and some of them are secretly happy about what's going on. There's a small minority of people who are the loudest, who are still super pro blue church. But I think that there are a lot of people like, well, you know, if you got rid of a couple more departments, we've got a couple on the list that we might recommend, and that would be fine. It would be great.
I never imagined this type of revolution would not be bloody.
Mm-hmm. Well,
this is
early days, Jacob. Early days.
Look, I'm the worrywart. I am the worrywart, but
they did just let in millions of people we don't know who they are. There are scary things.
Well, I actually think it's the scariest thing.
Say, give thanks to the Lord for his grace endures. I'm translating on the fly. Hodul Hashem kitov ki l'olam chasto. However you guys translate that verse. We have to, like, the gratitude is where we have to start.
Yeah. And one thing, the thing that I'm most worried about is not illegal immigrants, but these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of woke people that had woke jobs in the government industrial blue church NGO complex suddenly completely, immediately, quickly cut off from their income. And that they, don't have a lot of marketable skills in like the real corporate world that, needs to actually make a profit, and them getting restless and well organized and coming back with something. At the very least, like there's Antifa recruitment has to be off the charts.
They are so incompetent.
Yeah, maybe, but that you don't need to be super competent to be destructive and violent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes. That's the group that you worry about, Sam. And so listen, we're not out of the woods. Sam, I was always hoping that you would have applied to Doge because they were trying to find guys just like you on the HHS side. Seriously, they want guys like you.
Maybe
I should. They still have on their X. You can still send in your resume and apply.
Oh,
I want Sam. I want Sam and Doge. Forget
but Elon likes you working in an office. I kind of like working from home for the blue church a little bit.
Well, you do kind of need younger people that are willing to sleep, that have got no other commitments, right? And they're just grinding.
Could I do 20 hours a week from home? Is that okay, Elon?
Right.
I don't think it is for him. I think Michael's right that he wants the 80 hours a week on the floor of the office type.
Tech army. It's a tech army. He needs a small battalion of IT people, right, that are sleeping on cots, right? And
he got them Caspers. They loaded Caspers up in there. Nice mattress. It's a beautiful mattress.
I forget who was talking about the dangers of debathification, right? So what happened when we conquered Iraq and we lost the peace after the war was part of the problem was debathification. They took all of these competent elites out of everything and told them, you guys get nothing, which destroyed. We did not win the peace.
But that's because the Baathists were actually the competent people.
Yeah.
But in this time, we're removing mostly incompetent people. But I'm worried about them being angry and restless and in the mood for destruction, not offering some super coherent resistance, but more just like mayhem downtown and you know, things like that we don't need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And ironically, it'll be worse in blue states and blue cities who won't do anything about it. You know, and like they'll be kind of strangely destroying themselves. But I happen to live in a blue state in a blue city, and I would prefer Michigan Avenue to be open and not closed.
I live in Los Angeles. When Anna Kasparian, who also lives in Los Angeles, she's been making noises about, hey, no, it's not okay that I'm getting assaulted while I'm walking my dog. It is amazing how things are changing.
That was a big flip. That was a big flip.
In ways that I simply did not imagine God would be this kind to us.
So I think that this also is a dispositional difference. So like anything close to communism is going workers' rights, limit this many hours, whereas the flip side, right, is going, no, suck it up, work 24 hours a day, deal with it, work hard. And there has to be vision that drives those people onto that. And if it's like sheer resentment that they're trying to like just tear this thing down, it won't last.
The difference between a salaried employee and an hourly employee, right? Like this is something we've classically had, right? You get the doctors who are the residents. They get paid shit, and then they get paid large hourly, right? And same thing with law. You know, you get the first year associate, and then he makes partner, and suddenly he's not working. We're going to have to. Our society is going to have to restructure well.
Yeah. And I think that Trump's motto is, I'm not going to be building the new things. That's y'all's job. I'm just tearing down all of this old bad stuff.
So
and there might be some negative. I mean, there might be more apple than worm in some of these departments, or there might be some very, there's some babies, at least some in some of the bathwater.
So Paul thinks I'm trolling, and Paul, as an inveterate member of the Blue Church, as a boomer who doesn't really get what's already happening, I'm sorry, Paul, the world has left you behind. And no, I'm not trolling. Well, Paul actually he's very tech savvy. So why would you be such a boomer, Paul?
I mean, he's old
almost,
Gen X.
He's straddling. He's almost. Gen X.
Paul's going to ARC. He's on the right side. He
is going to ARC, and I don't know if Paul was here when I said what WEF was last year, ARC is going to be this year. That is.
I'm curious. It'll be interesting. I haven't followed. I just didn't have any interest in ARC. Sorry, Paul. I just didn't have any interest in what they were doing. I guess maybe I'll be there. Maybe I'll follow some of that, whatever. The thing that you mentioned, and I guess you were trying to talk to me, but I knew it. I think, and Paul's on here now. He talked about it in his video today. I mean, what has happened is a sea shift, a change has happened, a dam has broken. This is not Republican and Democrat. We've had the turning, and so he saw that little microcosm in the CRC where the 30% couldn't believe that the 70%, right, didn't want to go down that road. That's happened in this country now, and we'll see how all this plays out. And the other thing is like what I hope, and I know this is it, but what I hope is, and it will happen eventually, is this country will work best when you have two opposing sides that at least kind of have American
Right.
interests
So this is what I was
and want to root out
saying.
corruption, because you got to have the counterbalance, right? Because you can't let one run all the way
What's
to
going
the
to
other.
happen, what seems like is happening, the Democratic Party is going to be defunct, and you're going to the Republicans are going to split into Maha and MAGA, right? And Maha is going to be the new leftist part, the new left-wing party.
RFK
And
runs for president on the Democratic ticket in 2028 against Vance.
We're going to have two parties. Yeah, what those two parties, how it's going to shake down, I don't think, but the factions appear to be MAGA versus Maha.
And here's the funny thing: they had Tulsi and they had RFK Jr. Had they decided to go against corruption and kind of grab that Bernie base or whatever, it was all right there for the taking. And they were so corrupted they couldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter, I mean, Tulsi's another one, right? Like seriously, like you say, there are these factions that come out, because she certainly has differences of. Everyone has agreed to, we need to get after the corruption right now. That's what this was about. It was about common sense, corruption. We're done with this stuff. But it's going to break apart, and it has to, and it needs to. Like you need to have. Americans are smart enough to realize we want to keep things right in the middle. We'll go Republic. We'll go. No matter the name, but the Republic. Let's go right back here in the middle, and let's kind of keep things on the tracks. Things have gotten so broken that we have to do what's happening right now. But eventually, they're going to stay out in the wilderness for a little bit, because just like the elites in Grand Rapids they're still playing the same game. That's the same thing that's happened, because you can watch it on CNN. You can watch it, what you were talking about, Jacob, right? The old ways don't apply anymore.
Yeah. What the Democrats...
It's more like Bishop Bud than it is even Grand Rapids. The CRC, out of the main line, the CRC, I really believe, has been... They might be the only ones that actually survive from the main line. The Seven Sisters, I think the CRCs might be it. Paul, what do you have to say?
Is the CRC mainline? I don't think so. I think the RCA is mainline.
Reconquista seems to think the CRC is mainline.
Oh, well. I was just going to comment that Trump won 49.8% of the vote and Kamala won 48.3% of the vote. People talk like this is like whoosh.
No, Paul, I'm sorry. I don't think you understand what's going on right now.
So have you seen? I just want to finish.
Lance, please. Okay, Paul. Friday, I would have agreed with you. What has been going on over the past 48 hours? Talk to people who live in Washington, D.C. Talk to people who live in Washington, D.C. No, this is not business as usual.
No, I know that.
Well, and so Paul, where I would push back is the dam is broken a little bit. So here's the funny thing, and this is even being shown on CNN and other places, like Quinnipiac. The Democrats have never been more unfavorable, and this is even after Trump has been doing all this stuff, than they are now. He's never had a higher approval rating, and the sorts of things that but it's 58%. We're talking in our country, people are very supportive if you look at the actual polling of the actions that are being taken. A dam has broken, and that whole kind of what the Democratic Party elites, the elites have become what they had become, that's over. And the Bernie bros, who used to be over there, are kind of over here in the Maha camp and everything else. Now, again, they don't want to be there. There's going to be the split. We don't know what the split's going to look like. But the Schumer, Pelosi, Bush, Cheney, that group is dead. We're done with them.
We'll see. I think generally speaking, yes, I agree with you. And I think, but the nation isn't like the CRC. The CRC vote was 70-30. And I think you're right in that Trump is sort of like Silicon Valley right now, break things, and let's see what survives. And when things get broken, people get upset. And I think the real challenges we're facing, I mean, you can go after, and it's please get rid of corruption. Please bring sense to military procurement. Please. I mean, that stuff is.
Well,
Get rid of the Department of Education, though.
Okay, but now we finish.
Sam and I have been talking about CMSP, Paul, which both of us know a lot more about than you do. We're talking trillions of dollars in yearly savings. Trillions of dollars.
I mean, what's going to happen to healthcare based off of what we've seen that's been happening to the other departments so far? I mean, I do think that this is one of the biggest changes in American politics outside of wartime, basically ever.
I agree. But what I was going to say is that healthcare spending, Social Security, defense, service on the deficit. If you're going to deal with American debt, you got to deal with these. I mean, Paul Ryan worked on that. So,
but Paul, that is what we are talking about. CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, right? Okay. Like you know me, insurance broker. You know Sam. He's been working on in the health field. We're talking about trillions of savings.
Yeah. Well, and hey, if he can do that, I mean,
he fired 80% of the workforce at Twitter. Twitter hasn't broken.
What I think will be, if I were the Democrats, my strategy, to the extent that they have one at all right now, would be to let him do it and then be able to figure out the things that are least popular about what he did that he broke, have an open primary for the first time in decades, where there's just an absolutely fair, free, untampered with from the higher echelons primary.
No super delegates, right? No super
delegates, no backroom funding, no cigar-filled rooms that are actually deciding what's happening. Actually let the voters do it. Because the one thing that the Republicans did right in 2016, even though I was adamantly against it at the time, was they didn't meddle with it. They didn't stop Trump. And there were cries and hairs on fire trying to get the Republican establishment to stop Trump in some way. And they're like, our rules are our rules, and we're going to let the procedures follow themselves. And the Democrats haven't done that in a generation. And so let Trump break things, and then let some new leaders rise up through the primary process. And their main popularity will be, well, Trump broke this, and this, and I'm going to fix that.
If they're smart, that's what they'll do.
Unfortunately, and disenfranchise all the woke people. Disenfranchise all of them.
I have not seen the Democratic Party. If you look at the election they just had, Ezra Klein's podcast from today. It's 10 minutes long, highly produced. Listen to it. All he says is, "Don't believe your lying eyes."
And what's he mean by that?
That Trump is saying a lot of things and he's trying to distract you. Don't pay attention. Don't listen. Like they're flooding their own zone. Best thing we can do is ignore it. There's an election in 2-4 years. We'll deal with it then. It's Baghdad Bob shit.
Mm-hmm. So, PVK, what are you hoping to see at ARC? And a broader question is what is the relationship between TLC, Peterson, ARC, Trump, and broader global reactionary Trump-like political movements? Because I think we can all kind of feel that these things are similar and have a lot of connections, at the very least in terms of people, but also in terms of vibe, connections to the internet, male energy, whatever you want to put it.
I'm going to ARC this time, having been to it once, so I kind of know, I think I know what I'm going to, but now it's going to have 4,000 people instead of 1,500 people. So in that sense, I really wonder what I'm going to. I'm going there mostly to see people I know and like, and probably meet some new people. The speeches, I mean, Peterson was just, this is the greatest lineup, but Twitter, how do you compete with, not Twitter, sorry, Elon. How do you compete with YouTube in terms of lineup? Because
the one thing, but you remember the Maha thing that Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand were at?
Yeah.
Right? Now they won that election.
Yeah.
And ARC is the next thing. The people who are going to be at ARC are going to be on a whole new level of power.
And there's a certain
last year.
I mean, there's a certain John the Baptist relationship between Peterson and Trump that Peterson in his overalls, getting yelled at by students on campus was in some ways a foreshadowing of a lot of the things that have happened.
Okay, but my question is, does the format of ARC work for what? So I'm going to go to ARC to network and strengthen relationships and probably make some new relationships. So is that what ARC is, or is ARC a platform in order for people to be heard? Because most of the people on the list of who we're going to hear at ARC, we've heard from, and we sort of know what they're going to say.
It's just going to be the new WEF. ARC is going to be the new WEF. That's it.
I asked this question. I know Jan God thinks I'm playing some kind of centrist or something, but I just don't really know. So I don't really see. My question is, how do these things function, and how do they impact the world? Because I'm genuinely not sure.
But Paul, you're being invited there specifically so that you ask questions like that with that kind of perspective.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
And
That's like informing and it, to even hear that perspective or to hear you at all has some kind of influence that trickles out, right? And that's part of the point.
There is nothing new under the sun. People are pretending or thinking, oh, now there's going to be some sort of complete revolution where the WEF has existed for what, 30, 40, 50 years? And how it functions is something that has been studied. And from everything that I have seen, Peterson has been using professionals for this stuff. He's still signed up with CAA, right? All that I'm seeing is a shift. WEF, which functioned and until last year was continuing to function, is just going to be replaced with ARC. That's it.
And Paul, you talked about.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, Paul, you talked about mainly going there to want to build relationships and make new ones. Well, maybe that is what it's doing, but it's building the relationships that are sort of the right-leaning intelligentsia of the new anti-global global order.
King Elon,
and there are different levels of the relationships being built, and you're in one wing of the thing, but there are some very important levels of relationships that are going to be built that will be very powerful and effective.
You are being invited to King Elon's court for a dance, and you're going to get to dance.
Elon isn't going to be there, is he?
I think he's definitely going to be there.
Really?
He might. I don't know. He might. I wouldn't surprise me.
Paul, like the Maha movement was a part of the election. RFK Jr. is getting confirmed today, to my great surprise. ARC is one of the important factions of this election. You're at
Well,
the
but
big boys table now, Paul.
Well,
Well, I would just-
there are different levels of tables at ARC too. There was like the area that I was in, and then there was like the area that you needed a special badge to get behind. I wasn't in that area.
Well, sure. There are 7 layers of heaven, Paul, but you might be on one of the higher ones, and there are levels of influence and power and decision making and effectiveness at each one.
But there's a reason that Jordan Hall is playing in our playground.
Paul, the Pope of the CRC, is going to be the leader of the Protestant faction of this new world. But Sonny, what are you?
I don't know.
It also sounds so hilarious to say that, Paul, because I kind of agree with what Jacob is saying. But after seeing what Livingstone's, I was at Livingstone's a week and a half ago, and it's way worse than you could possibly lead on, Paul, in terms of the quality of the building and like everything. And it's, whatever. It's the manger in Bethlehem, I guess. God worked in a
when
funny
I
way.
came to Livingstone's, unlike Sam, I said, there's so much potential here, Paul. Didn't I?
Here's the interesting thing about ARC when I look at these speakers. I mean, the only way I heard about ARC last time was because Pajot talked about it. He had his talk. You talked about a PVK or whatever. I didn't pay them much, whatever. And Peterson has specifically said he's trying to counterbalance the WEF. I think that's what he was trying to get different sorts of conversations.
Yes, he did.
But if you'll look on that, there's no cabinet member. Trump's not. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, the people who are, quite frankly, moving the movement and the movers and shakers, they aren't at ARC. I'm just going to tell you, you're not playing the game if you don't have JD Vance there. I mean, Teal's there. I'm talking about, like, if it's really going to be something, if you don't think that they're going to play a role of how this thing's going to play out. I mean, I'm just going to say Peterson didn't like Trump.
To answer RJ's question, thank God all of the rabbis that I've seen around ARC and Peterson have been Orthodox. And in half an hour, I have my normal Mesilat Yesharim, which, Paul, I heard at your little Connecticut thing, the introduction to Mesilat Yesharim was apparently some big contribution. We're doing the rest of the book, Paul, if you ever want to look at it. And I'm not going to allow this to interrupt that. So we have a 30-minute hard out, and I want to hear what Batsani, because he never comes on, what he has to say.
Well, somebody asked the question of what does TLC have to do with all the rest of this stuff, and so when you think about what the function of WEF is, right? I mean, in large part, they're setting out the how, right? And being kind of very specific, but also part of what they're doing is they're setting a vision, right? And I think part of what this last I mean, a few months, I think I would say in particular is somebody, I think it was McMo, maybe he was saying morning in America or something like that in the chat earlier, but and especially I think of my kids, right? They've lived under this kind of managed decline, right? We're just gonna manage the decline down to net zero, and you're gonna have your little pod, and you're gonna eat your bugs, and you're gonna share your car with your neighbor, and and you're gonna have this little vision of life that the WEF set out for you, right? And that seemed where everything was gonna be heading. And that is a nightmare vision that they were giving the world, right?
Well, so and it had to do with Karl Popper specifically, right? So Karl Popper's philosophy is a direct relation, right, to how the WEF. Right? You look at Karl Schwab and his influences; it's all Popper ideas, right? So and that was a little bit more subtle. I don't think it was so overt, but that's what happened. And what's happening with ARC is more transparency of like Peterson's like.
And Schellenberger is the anti-Popper, right?
WEF was looking forwards to the grave, and downward, and Ark is looking forward to heaven and Mars and the sky.
Okay, now this is a video that I want to make that I haven't made yet, but it very much follows on the CRC video in that what is the eschatology for conservatives now? Because I think there's a real fissure between the transhumanists like Musk and the religious like Dreer. And I don't, last time I talked to Rod, or heard from Rod, I don't think he was planning on going to ARC. And there are a number of significant people that went to ARC last year that won't be there this year. So I think the real question that this new movement has to answer is JD Vance your future? And what does that future look like? Because let's say a neo-rad trad like JD Vance and Elon Musk, well, they can agree that they don't want the old regime, but in terms of building a dynasty and a movement that's going to go a generation, they're going to need a telos. And at this point, one hasn't emerged.
I really think part of that is going to be a break. Maha and MAGA are going to end up breaking. And you have to have, I don't want to live in a one-party state, and we're not going to live in a one-party state. But the era of Kamala Harris and Lynn Cheney, like that uniparty, is being replaced by a very different uniparty.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I also think, well, first of all, it's very early days. But I was surprised, and I'll admit I was wrong, when I saw the Brett Weinstein thing that Peterson, and I thought to myself, to what degree is Trump really going to give these people influence? Now, in terms of his cabinet appointments, he seemed to. But I agree with you, Jacob, that there's some real tensions in this coalition. And the coalition, in terms of their victory margin, was slim. And so, I would think there'd be an opportunity for the Democrats. But again, as early signs are, they're not finding it. Sort of like when I look at many in the exiled CRCs that have been pushed out, I look at these people and I say, you've got a great opportunity to really try something, but it's really difficult for people who've had power for so long and they lose it. All they want to try and do is get back to where they were. And even in Make America Great Again, you sure got some of that vibe in certain conservative elements. And the thing is, there's no going back.
So Paul, I want to challenge the framing just a little bit, because Trump could have won with a lot less, right? And the Republicans have been laying out that gerrymandering in those districts for quite some time. So the kind of win that Trump and the larger conservative base got is something that, they could take a hit of like 10% of what they were doing, and they could still win, right? So this is like a really close to a Reagan kind of result.
And if the census was overpumped because they were counting illegal aliens and stuff, this is all public. So if you actually give it a proper census and you reallocate to what are clearly safely red states, so on and so forth, you would see an electoral college perspective, things have definitely
There's going to be
But I mean, Paul's
census. There is a real shift. And again, if you cut $1 trillion from the budget, with that is going to this election, this midterm, if you cut $1 trillion from this budget before the next election, things are going to be very different.
Yeah, but Paul's right.
If
sort
he
of
manages to do that.
So like what Peterson said to why am I forgetting his name? The late night host who is the atheist who smokes cigars and has been Bill Maher, right?
Maher,
So
yeah,
when Peterson, an early appearance of Peterson on Bill Maher, when he said, well, Bill, what about, the 49% of your country that voted for Trump? Are you just going to write them off? Are you just going to ignore them? I mean, the MAGA team needs to remember that calibration too. What about the 48.1 or whatever percent it was that
Trump
okay, so maybe Trump could die soon for all I know, but I'm just saying in general, that half of the country is still there, and a lot of them won't change as fast as we kind of hope and expect them to.
Well, and
I said in the chat earlier, the only way to fight populism is with populism, which is a ridiculous thing to say when we're in a frickin' democracy. But somehow populism is this thing that's a dirty thing, and for people to like your candidate, I guess, is just some sort of anti-democratic thing now, which is just, it's all so clown world. But whatever this other thing was, this democracy that just lost, right, and is being dismantled currently, right? There's no going back to that. But I do think, eventually there will be some sort of populism that comes up, and and I guess the real question is whether or not the two sides will war, or whether they'll actually be able to work together. And
Paul's,
Go
Paul's exactly right. I mean, because listen, you had libertarians, independents, MAGA Republic. You had this coalition, MAHA. You had this coalition, and they're dealing with this crisis moment. But as we even talk about here amongst Christians, I mean, eventually, Nicole Shanahan, who's supportive of this now, she's going to have a different view of what JD Vance is going to have. These things are going to naturally happen once you deal with the crisis moment. And right now, everyone said, okay, deal with the crisis moment. And they wanted someone to go in. They know it's a bull in a china shop, and we've given him permission to do that. And that's what the polling is for people are there. And I think the dam broke for a lot of people where they're like I gave him permission to be okay with it. But that stuff's all going to pass. And then people are going to be smart, and they're going to figure it out, and they're going to have good arguments. And so it has to happen. We can't I don't want this run to the, whatever the right is, because then you're going to end up with Mitch McConnell's and George W. Bush's and crap. We need to have something that shapes itself, but it has something what Ark is trying to do, the Herman Flirt, like something that meets the moment and just, we left common sense. That's the one thing I hear from my friends who are independent or whatever, who are very reluctant, but did it. They're like, man, we just needed some common sense. Like these things, they jumped the shark.
Yeah, but that commonality, right? But as far as I can see, this is a coalition of Christian non-deconstructionist friendly cohorts, right? So if you're somewhere close to being friendly with Christians and not deconstructing, right, or even in a denomination that's in the middle of deconstructing, or tradition that's in the middle of deconstructing, that's what's holding it together. That's the tail. It's like Christian friendly and non-deconstructionist things.
Yosef wasn't here earlier. He's bringing up 2 points which we did discuss, but which are worthy of keeping in mind. One is, it looks like they are going to end up making over 1 million federal workers unemployed. That we have to remember.
They won't be happy.
Yeah.
Even though they should be angry at the Democratic establishment who gave them fake jobs for the last however many years, but that's not how humans tend to work.
Second, if the $1 trillion is just the movement of wealth, if the wealth is just getting transferred and it's going to get consumed again, right? Then this isn't going. People are not going to see the benefit of it. The benefit has to trickle out to.
If it doesn't help restore a middle class, you're screwed.
And this is why, from the beginning, I was like, we need to talk about Antichrist.
So in the comments, somebody pointed out, like, hey, I'm skeptical of how many of the tech bros are Christian friendly. This is the Peterson shift, though. This is the Peterson shift. That has made a big difference.
Paul, you don't watch my channel enough.
How many channels in the TLC say that to me?
Yeah,
well, he obviously doesn't watch mine enough
important.
either.
3 hours ago, I started this stream talking about
3 hours ago. Where were you, Paul? I saw you posted a video. Why weren't you listening?
What? Did you expect me not to be talking about Messiah and anti-Messiah? Do I talk about anything other than the Messiah?
Well, I've never heard anti-Messiah.
Right, because it's a faulty idea. It's a Christian idea.
Well,
right?
you know,
in Judaism, we don't have this idea of Antichrist.
That's what I thought.
Because it is one of these. It's one of these ideas, seeing through the glass darkly, that Christianity has, where until you come to the fullness of the light, you need these Christian concepts to move you from paganism towards the fullness of the light. So Antichrist is one of these bad ideas that Christianity needs, like translating the Bible, right? Before you can actually come to the fullness of the light.
Yeah, well, it says that anyone who doesn't confess Jesus is not of God, but is of the spirit of the Antichrist. I don't hear you confessing Jesus very much.
5 hours is being kind.
Look, when it comes down to it, if you want to listen to my channel, you can. In 20 minutes, we're going to be talking Mesilat Yesharim of the Ramchal. I don't even remember Path of the Just. That's how it gets translated. If you want to learn Hebrew, you can learn Hebrew, but that's what this channel's about.
So I'm surprised from the comments. Oh, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, right? I think that right there is a good example of, well, and Sam being on this channel too, right? This is a good example of maybe what, BOM maybe has to do with ARC and the rest of this stuff, right? We've got some commonality, right? We can hang out, we can talk, we can be friendly, like we can appreciate and love each other, right? But we don't agree about everything, and we don't play down, and we don't pretend like the stuff we disagree on isn't there, or that's not important, or that, well, this thing that I think is true, well, I don't really think it's true. I'm going to pretend like it's not, right? Like we have our convictions and we stick to them, right? And a small bit, I think that's kind of part of what I saw with, somebody was calling Trump's team the Avengers over the summer, I think. But you've got Tulsi Gabbard, you've got Elon Musk, you've got RFK Jr., you've got a bunch of people like working together and trying to, I think, contribute towards some common end and common vision when they don't actually agree on everything. And part of the process there, and maybe this is part of the magic of the estuary or something along those lines, is, at some level, let's figure out what we have in common and what we can hold in common. Let's talk about that. Let's forefront that instead of spending all of our time like camping on the things we don't disagree on, or that we don't agree on. Sorry, you know what I mean?
Or boundary policing, as Paul would say.
It's not commonality for commonality's sake, though. This is the Tom Holland point, right? And I'm almost afraid to use this term in these circles, but like it's like proximity to a Judeo-Christian thing, right? So whatever that's the concentric circles, right? That's the alliance. That's the telos.
So Judeo-Christian nationalism it is.
Well, actually,
I
would argue that the opponents are also Judeo-Christian.
Yeah,
I think we are continuing to suss through the tensions within, because another video I want to make is about the J.D. Vance interview where he got into the ordered loves, because
now you're just clickbait, Paul. That's just Christian YouTube dribble drabble. Every Christian YouTuber's already made a video about the
critical, because it exposes the blue church and their Christian nationalism.
Yes,
they just never wanted to say it.
earlier, Paul, when I was like really trying to use the word of deconstructing, like so there's some that are like have close relationality to Judeo-Christian things, but they're deconstructing. Now maybe that's just a value judgment on my part, but the ones that are right, that is outside. They're moving in one direction, and other folks are moving in the other.
And I think that's one similarity to Donald Trump in this little corner is that Donald Trump's not an ideologically, I don't know, purist or boundary policing.
He was a Democrat,
right? I mean, it's unclear what he really like. Like, if you're to even try and propositionally define how he thinks, it would be very difficult. And
he likes money. He likes sex. We know those things he likes.
Right. He's more limbic. You know, he's more drives based than he is sort of like an ideological proposition based. And he's willing to tolerate a whole bunch of these sorts of, you know, misfit characters that are drawn to him, but he can unite them more through will of personality than almost anything else. And that proved to be surprisingly resilient against the super strict boundary policing, hyper propositionally exclusive Democratic Party recently.
Well, to go a little deeper than Paul's caricature there, he went to the church for the power of positive thinking, like Norman Peale. Let's think about that. His mom was there, so he has this.
Church of America.
There you go. He has this. It's just that sort of thing, and. You know, despite all, and he's not an ideologue in any way. I mean, if you would look at, he's certainly not fully conservative, and he certainly has, like, Trump was actually the one person who was for gay marriage before Hillary and Barack Obama and things like that. I mean, he's been consistent. He's been talking about he sees the world a certain way, and he's been talking about it. I think the one thing I would challenge something with respect to that is, and I think we saw that after the assassination, I think he loves America. And I think, like, he sat in his office and they couldn't fix the damn rink, the ice rink, and he said, I'm going to get it done. And he got it done in 2 months, and they couldn't get it done in years. I think he actually wants competency. I think he wants to win. I think, you know, if you were to look at him from that perspective, I do think he cares about that. And I think why he can resonate with regular people is I think he likes people too. Like when he goes into McDonald's, because he used to do this thing where he would do the jobs of the people at his thing. And if you talk to people who work for him, they love him, like the door, whether it be in the kitchen or whatever else. He's just, I think he likes people, which is something
you got to remember the Pence thing, right? The low church, lower class American, like this is where the base was for them, right? They didn't really have a strong intelligentsia the last go about this, right? And so that's what's transformed and changed. Now we've got the trad cats and the tech bros, right? That are all kind of like reevaluating whether or not they were Christian friendly and if they could make amends with their evangelical parents, right? And now they've figured out how to do that.
I think you're exactly right, because he had the base. I remember watching one season of The Apprentice, and one guy used the term white trash. Trump stopped him. He said, I don't like that term, because Trump is definitely a populist. But I think you're exactly right. What happened was we sort of saw a merger between kind of IDW energy and that Trump populism. And my question is, how long will that hold? Because it was really interesting when Steve Bannon and J.D. Vance got crossways, because there's fissures in that thing, and it's gonna be an interesting 4 years.
It's going to definitely split in, but I have to say, in 2016, I wrote a long essay on Facebook, how I will always be never Trump, and how much I have disliked Donald Trump, and I have to say I was wrong.
Well, Jacob, we know you have enough integrity to change your mind and admit it. That's something that's really good about you.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in August, Jacob.
You're paying for the ticket if I'm coming.
Well, that's what I'll create the Jacob Benevolence Fund ticket tier for you. That will just, as long as well, Jacob was saying my benefactor level price of tickets was too low, and that I should have higher tiers of benefactor tickets to raise more money. And so I'll make a Jacob Federici benefactor ticket that would just pay if one person buys it, it'll pay for Jacob.
Before I forget, I have to do a commercial interruption as well. Later today, I am having a discussion with Christianity on the Spectrum. If you know that account, that channel, for Fountain of Comfort, because this is what we do here.
Well, and I've got to watch. Paul made his debut on Gospel Simplicity. I haven't had a chance to watch that yet. So.
That was cool.
Hold on,
Underappreciated. I ran
you
those
did that
conversation.
before.
I ran those conversation to Austin Suggs like 4 years ago.
Did you really?
This is how little Paul watches my channel.
Paul, is this?
I ran those conversation to him back when before the pandemic.
And it was good. I liked seeing him not on his channel doing his thing when you had him, Sam. He was very chill, like he's just a chill guy. But I thought you did a good job talking.
Hold on, is this?
He was
really
actually
your
hard to
first
get to
time on
talk. If I
Gospel
remember.
Simplicity?
Yeah,
This
Gospel Simplicity. Yeah, I had Gospel Simplicity on my channel. I haven't been on his channel because he doesn't touch the Trinity.
I thought Paul was on there before. No,
Paul's been on Gospel No. Unbelievable and Gospel Simplicity are easily confused, I feel like.
Okay.
He's talking with Father Stephen.
I will look up your conversation with Austin.
Paul, what I really want to see, I want you to go on Ready to Harvest and talk about the CRC. That's my boy. I love watching his videos.
Yeah. I was a little frustrated because I really wanted to find out about him, but it was his channel, so he got to ask the questions.
Well, invite him on your channel and give him, like, honestly, when I had him on 3 or 4 years ago, I could tell that he was not used to being interviewed and was not good at maintaining a conversation from his side. And so I had to ask way more questions and like sort of, pull it out of him with a little bit more effort than I was used to, but I bet he's better at it now.
I'm used to pulling things out of people, so.
Yeah.
But I talked to Wokel today.
That's interesting. Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting conversation in the corner. People are going to.
Hey, Paul, quick question on him.
No ads now, but people are going to be.
He's been humming lately.
Yeah, he's in a Pentecostal tradition right now. Is that right? Okay. Did he grow up in that and come back to it? Born into it.
I think he stayed in it. Well,
Right. Yeah.
Canadian Pentecostal.
He said he was Jewish. No, obviously not Orthodox, but no, Wokel was.
If I remember correctly, Wokel grew up charismatic and is still charismatic. Maybe there might be lapses in his history where he wasn't always.
He might have some Jewish heritage, but no, he's been Pentecostal his whole life.
He's definitely said that I think he said he was halakhically Jewish, which means his mother. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said that before.
Maybe by ancestry, but not by practice.
Yes,
that's right.
Okay, well, we're going to round this off because Path of the Just awaits at the top of the hour. Last words, anybody?
Jacob, one of your talents is that you can hide what we really want to talk to about with like 2 hours of nonsense and then like put like the interesting stuff at the end so that we can speak our minds freely and know that only those who really want to watch are actually paying attention, and that it would be a lot of work for the wrong people to find this thing. And that's what you're good at, Jacob. And your prickliness keeps away the eyes that shouldn't be listening.
If you say so.
I found a post on X where Wokel said he was Jewish. So there must be some, you heard it somewhere, Jacob. I don't know what that means, but.
Yeah. Okay, so Lance, last words.
I've spoken too much. Thanks for opening this up, Jacob. I've been thinking about this, but I haven't really talked about it with anybody.
Michael, last words.
If you're late on the train with making amends to your parents, do it and teach your kids to do the same. Honor your father and mother.
Paul, last words.
Don't get caught up in the fever of the moment and the political fever. Wait a little while. Everything will change.
Sam, last words.
The wheels are still in spin, and it's unclear who that they're naming. The times they are changing. Yeah.
And my last words, as always, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And that means no Trinity, people.
Amen.
Midwestuary 2025, August 22nd through the 24th in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderklay, Rod Dreer, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Pajot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.
I'm going to use host's prerogative to put the Reverend Parcells to bed because he does need to get up in the morning.
Sorry, Reverend. Thank you.
But before he goes, I have a question. Let's say, God forbid, that I were to burn somebody at the stake for not being a Trinitarian. And I did not repent of that. Is that a salvation issue?
Sometimes Jacob takes that devil's advocate thing too
Isn't there
far.
a proverb that says something like, don't answer a fool according to his folly?
But there's a proverb that says, answer a fool according to his folly.
There is. Exactly right. And I'm going to leave it to you guys to determine, which of those was applicable in this situation as I go. So, but anyhow, good.
Thank you, Reverend.
Good to
Thank
chat
you.
with you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
The